Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm. We're socially awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy hostess, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone found a British person that they can annoy by gloating yesterday. And for those of you who don't live in landlocked states, I hope you threw some tea in the harbor for good measure.
I mean, to be fair, in terms of British people I know, you come very close. So,
well, that's I know exactly what you mean, and that's what makes it funny.
Yeah, like, are you not a pompous, aristocratic, self-absorbed, fancy tea-sipping motherfucker?
Point. But I am also an American who does all those things, and thus
so you're a traitor.
And thus when 4th of July comes round, I always feel a swelling of pride and a desire to throw tea in the nearest body of water.
I don't drink tea, so I don't really have that feeling. Yeah, at a fireworks show, it was fun because we got all the stuff from this guy who apparently just has his home business with fireworks. It was really good. It's actually a lot of good stuff. It's like better than most stuff you'd buy at like a fireworks store.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the dude has a. Well, the guy's former.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Guy's former army, and basically also apparently has a license to sell in the state of New York, which apparently is a big thing. But yeah, it was like a lot of cool stuff. So going there next year probably. I'm probably just gonna get a bunch of cakes. We had cakes and mortars, but we're probably just gonna stick with cakes because we got a bunch of them. But yeah, no, it was going crazy where I'm at. In terms of like the fireworks, just like all the streets around me were just lighting up.
Well, I remember in previous years, people in your area get ready for 4th of July really quickly, because I remember times where we've been doing the podcast in like May or even April, and they've been setting off fireworks, assuming they're fireworks, not gunshots.
It's better column A, column B.
Yep. And suddenly, I don't feel bad for not being a city slicking bastard yet. At some point, when my disability goes through, I will hopefully be moving to a maybe not city, but at least a larger town where there will actually be things, and I won't feel like I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere. As much as I enjoy the benefits of living in the middle of nowhere, I also would like to at some point have a life, and when disability money becomes a thing, I will hopefully be able to make a go at it. Maybe.
All right. Sorry, I am tired.
Hmm.
It's weird because I woke up at like 11 today.
Well, you also stayed up like 4 hours later than you normally stay up.
I was. That's true. Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah, I don't know why. Well, I don't know why I'm so tired. What the fuck?
And you still went to bed earlier than I did. It's a hilarious thing.
You ever think you're an insomniac, Dalton?
No, I'm just a night person.
Were you like this before you made a deal with Fairy Queen of the Winter Court?
Yes, I've been like this ever since college, pretty much. Prior to college, I was a morning person because I always got up relatively early for school. But as soon as I actually had something resembling a social life, I became a night person. Although I do suspect that being bound happily as I am to Mab probably expedites matters, considering that she appears to be more comfortable at night, especially during the summer season when her hold on this hemisphere is its weakest. But then again, I also think that probably has something to do with the fact that both Titania and Mab are linked and associated with the moon.
Yeah,
So the planetary hours of the moon during the daytime are more accordant to Titania, and Mab's are mostly the nocturnal hours
I have a
associated with the
question.
moon and
You
Saturn.
heard- I have a question for you
Hmm.
relating to your whole mumbo jumbo magic bullshit. Okay,
You are in an extremely flippant mood today.
I'm tired and it's really hot. So, I mean, I have my
Uh-huh.
AC on and stuff, but yeah, it's just like, so I apologize for that, but I'm also going to apologize to whatever spirits that will hear that because I do not want either nightmares or any of my, well, to be fair, I
I
have
I
terrible.
I doubt I doubt any spirits that would be within earshot are I doubt they're likely to take quarrel with you. I am more cautious in my wording because I am now directly linked
But,
to
but,
a very powerful entity. But
okay, but
normally spirits just aren't that close to nearby, especially not if you're indoors.
I still don't like taking the chance, man. Um,
Uh-huh.
rephrasing, just to be polite,
Mhm.
since this does so relate to the whole supernatural kind of side, um, or higher planes or
Yeah.
whatever definition would work in this sense.
Mhm.
Have you heard anything on the kind of celestial spiritual grapevine on why the fuck this summer of this year feels so unbearable?
I have no idea. Um to be honest with you, uh that is probably more in Titania's domain. And while I do still make gestures to her because I essentially feel compelled to, because you know, being adjacent to the Fey Courts means you have to be relatively on good terms with both of them, because, well, otherwise you run the risk of Sleeping Beauty syndrome. But being that as it may, I don't know if anything spiritual is to blame for the weather in that front.
Oh, man, it's just like it's a really different kind of heat going on uh, compared to other
It also
summers I've had.
it also appears to be relatively local to you because I haven't had insane weather. Although to be fair,
I live in the
um,
Midwest, so yeah, that makes a lot more sense. To be fair,
uh, although to be fair, my surroundings always seem to be relatively temperate ever since I made the deal with Mab. I think because in some sense she's always a little bit closer to me than she otherwise would have been had I not made the bargain.
Okay. So
Although
okay.
that makes the weather insane because when winter and summer go at it with each other, storms tend to be the result.
Right. Okay. Let's continue because I am on the verge of passing out.
Yeah.
All right. So this is from fandompulse.substack.com. The Tolkien Society attempts to hide its SAW infiltration of Tolkien scholarship and The Lord of the Rings. It's written by John F. Trent, published June 17th, 2025. Oh, John Trent. Okay, that guy's done stuff for Bound into Comics. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I want this to be kind of clear, just so we have preference for this. I am not the biggest Lord of the Rings guy.
I am considerably more a Lord of the Rings guy than you, so I will be speaking at least partially with the ethos of a Tolkien fan.
Right, and I just want to make this clear. It's not that I dislike Lord of the Rings. I think it's interesting. I've looked into the lore and stuff of it, which I find interesting. It's just I have both watched the movies and have tried to read the books, and I simply cannot. I don't know, just something about them. I've never.
That to be fair to you, that is a very common complaint. Tolkien is very dense, and he was dense even by his historical like the time period in which he lived standards. So I have heard many people say that Tolkien is just too dense for them.
Well, no, it's not
Um,
even that. I just like I said, I tried to read The Hobbit back in high school, and I don't know. I got through like maybe a chapter or two, and I just found it incredibly.
yeah, if you struggled with The Hobbit, which is by far and away Tolkien's probably lightest work within the like Arda Legendarium, if you struggled with The Hobbit, I have no difficulty whatsoever believing that you would not have made it through Lord of the Rings if somebody put a gun to your head.
Fuck. Okay, Tolkien Society is attempting to hide its SJW infiltration of Tolkien scholarship and the Lord of the Rings. Robin Ann Reed, a former professor in the Department of Literature and Languages at Texas A&M University Commerce, revealed in a Substack post that she had submitted a paper to the Tolkien Society titled "Racing to Gender Arda, a stylics analysis," in which she allegedly provides intersectional analysis on Tolkien's work.
Yeah, I don't know how you can do that with Tolkien organically because when Tolkien mentioned races in Lord of the Rings, he meant it in the same way that Dungeons and Dragons tends to mean it, which is closer to species than it is to, you know, skin color or race. There are like African adjacent people in the race of men in Tolkien's mythos, but they are not where the main story of Lord of the Rings is occurring because those are the Easterlings, the race of men that was twisted into worshipping Melkor and thus is mostly allied with Mordor, even insofar as they do come up, which again they don't come up in the Lord of the Rings proper. Most of the lore we have on them comes from the Silmarillion and some of Tolkien's like letters and the supplementary material. That being said, yes, when Tolkien mentions race in his Legendarium, 9 times out of 10 he means what we would refer to as a species rather than a race in terms of like skin color. No matter what warped like diversity casting bullshit they try to get away with Rings of Power. Moving on.
While the proposal was accepted, Reed claimed that the Tolkien Society requested that she change her abstract because previous public postings of abstracts led to online harassment on and from social media.
You mean people were quite passionate in the defense of Tolkien's Legendarium and or telling you how wrong and stupid you were being? Yeah, no, that's just That's not harassment. That's just you being an idiot and being therefore treated like a fucking idiot. Especially given that you're supposed to be an academic, and therefore you should be comporting yourself with more seriousness than you are if you're that ideologically warped that you need to see Tolkien from a racial lens, given that Tolkien, to most people's best knowledge, had no racial opinions, like in the political sense, whatsoever. His mythos is completely devoid of that kind of politics and that kind of relationship with identity. Moving on.
The Tolkien Society received significant backlash for its 2021 seminar and 2022 Oxenmoot event. In 2021, it held a Tolkien and Diversity seminar that rightfully spurred critics to launch their own seminar as counter-programming. The institution described its Tolkien and Diversity seminar. Representation is now more important than ever, and Tolkien's efforts to represent or ignore particular characteristics requires further examination. Additionally, how a character's identity shapes and influences his place within Tolkien's secondary world still requires greater attention. The seminar aims to explore the many possible applications of diversity within Tolkien's works, his adaptations, and his readership.
This simply put, there is no racial or gender or sexual or there is no identitarian aspect to Tolkien. Insofar as Tolkien was trying to represent anything, he was trying to represent the English, and in particular the Norse, Germanic, and Anglo-Saxon aspects of like Western European culture. He explicitly wanted his legendarium to be kind of a mythization of the English, and a means by which the English could have sort of a founding myth in the same way that the French have the Charlemagne cycle, or the Germans have things like Beowulf, and of course the Norse have the prose Edda, and so on and on and on. Granted, my question for Tolkien would be King Arthur ? But I applaud him for being enough of a cultural and mythology fanboy that he was like, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna write a epic poem, essentially, but for England and the English diaspora, so to speak. So insofar as there is diversity in anything resembling an identitarian sense, that diversity is the mixing together of like the Arthurian mythos that Britain was kind of founded upon, the Anglo-Saxon and Norman, quasi-Germanic and Nordic territories, and the Viking sagas and so forth. That's as much diversity of identity you're really going to get with Tolkien, because that's the only thing he actively wanted to represent. That and the beauty and majesty of nature. That was also one of his main drivers and motives. That's why the forces of evil broadly in Tolkien's work are heavily associated with metal and mechanical technology and what we would now probably refer to as industrialization, as you can see in the Scouring of the Shire, as you can see in both Sauron and Saruman being Maiar of the Maiar under the Valar, Aule the Smith, and you can also see it in Melkor's desire to warp nature and make it his own to some extent, insofar as that kind of is what industrialization does. It brings the beauty and bounty of the natural world under human agency and human will, and usually uses some form of metal technology and mechanics in order to do that. Moving on. Yeah.
I'm back, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I don't know why the fuck I'm so tired. In response to this, Society of Tolkien launched a counter-program and explained its purpose. When J.R.R. Tolkien created Middle-earth, he filled it with characters, themes, and dangers that leapt from the pages to intrigue, excite, and give hope to his readers. In these sessions, we'll explore these concepts to celebrate all that makes his work stand the test of time and what we should take from them today.
Mm-hmm. That makes far more sense than bringing an identitarian lens to Tolkien, because insofar as he would have even known about identity in the sense that social justice means it, he honestly was very, very neutral on basically every race. Insofar as I think Tolkien was very much, at least, informed by osmosis by the liberal post-Enlightenment paradigm of race and broader identity does not matter, full stop. Even at a time when, thanks to a lot of people completely bastardizing and twisting and malforming the idea of evolution, a lot of quote-unquote intellectuals actually did think that there were substantive differences between the race. They were, of course, wrong and stupid, and they should be not necessarily ashamed of themselves because they were doing the best with what they had at the time, but they should certainly be taken with a grain of salt in that vein. But Tolkien is not one of the academics that honestly needs to be taken with a grain of salt in that vein. As far as we can tell, Tolkien did not have any racial preferences or gender preferences or anything at all. He was remarkably, at least, soft Enlightenment, like classical liberal. Even though I don't think it was even necessarily a conscious thing with him, he was too busy being a lover of his homeland and or a lover of the various mythologies from Western Europe and wanting to emphasize and point out how awesome they were to anyone and everyone who would listen. Tolkien was surprisingly based, given the time he came of maturity in and stuff. But yeah, Tolkien was very, very based in that he was such a mythology fanboy and a literature fanboy and a cultural fanboy that he just didn't have much time in his life for much else. Which, to be fair, is a perfectly valid strategy. Just avoid the controversy in the politics entirely, and double and triple and quadruple down on your nerdy obsession. That is a based choice if ever I saw one. Moving on.
Okay. In 2022, the Tolkien Society faced backlash after revealing it was featuring a paper by Reed titled J.R.R. Tolkien, Culture Warrior, the Alt-Right Religious Crusades Appropriation of Tolkien.
Okay. Tolkien doesn't have political, quote-unquote, positions in the way that modern social justice has termed it. He was, again, to his credit, and I do emphasize, I think it is to his credit, he was such a fanboy of various mythologies and various literatures and various, like, cultural influences and love of history in general that he just didn't seem to have any particular opinions on the topic of, like, race and gender, because he was too busy doing other shit. Not saying he wouldn't have taken a racial opinion, given that, again, at the time of Tolkien doing his thing, the intelligentsia of his day had warped and twisted, in many cases, evolutionary theory into a racial caste system, which is bullshit. And as far as anyone can tell from Tolkien's writings, Tolkien himself probably thought that it was bullshit, although he wouldn't have put it in as blunt terms as that, because Tolkien was a classy motherfucker. But yeah, as far as we can tell, insofar as Tolkien had any like major racial or gender leanings at all, he defaulted to the nebulous nature of the like classical liberal position of everyone can be worthwhile on their own merits and fuck off to anything else. Moving on though.
It's unclear exactly what Reed's abstract for a paper is or what the paper is about, but in her Substack post, she included a letter she had written to the Tolkien Society declining its request to have her alter the abstract. In that letter, Reed wrote, "Your concern is that my proposal to develop a phenomenological and stylistic analysis of how Tolkien's narrative voices entangle female characters in Middle-earth, resulting in a radicalized, white, gendered, feminine world, could lead far-right extremists to assume that I and the Tolkien Society are fellow travelers in their authoritarian desire to build their fantasy of a white Christian patriarchal world ruled by their strongmen leaders."
Okay, first of all, the alt-right is barely even a thing, or ever even was a thing. Y'all need to let the boogeyman die on that front. The most influential people in the alt-right, as it actually existed once upon a time, were people like J.F. Garapi and Richard Spencer, who were and are basically just douchebag wannabe hipster pricks who aren't even edgy enough to become genuine white supremacists in most cases. The alt-right is essentially two like Andrew Anglin or the AFA what hipsters are to actual intellectuals, i.e. Richard Spencer and J.F. Garapi are wealthy to upper middle class twats who are frankly so insecure and like effeminate that they tried to like double and triple and quadruple down on white supremacy in order to compensate for their utter lack of manhood in all other vectors. And the alt-right, as it actually existed once upon a time, pretty much died in like 2018 and only ever continues to be a thing because the mainstream media would rather fight that foe than the people who actually did oppose social justice proper. Granted, some of those people also ended up radicalizing themselves in a more of a traditionalist direction, but traditionalism isn't the same as alt-right, even as much as I am annoyed by traditionalism. And by the way, no, what Tolkien and Tolkien's works were in favor of was the idea or the sort of premise of a merit-based monarchy system, i.e. the one true king being able to sit on the throne because he deserves to. That's very, very different from an authoritarian strongman. And if you can't tell the difference between a merit-based monarchy, or at least an implicitly merit-based monarchy, and a fascist strongman dictator, that is because you have fascism on the brain and don't know how to differentiate between the concepts of monarchy and the concepts of autocracy. Moving on.
Alright, give me a sec. Alright, after citing the backlash from the Tolkien and Diversity Seminar, Reed then pointed to the assassination of Minnesota Speaker of the House Melissa Hortman and her husband. I understand your fear of drawing their attention again, especially given the increase in alt-right attacks occurring offline as the recent assassinations of Democrat representatives in Minnesota show. I think I have more informed idea that you do than you do about the likely nature of an online attack on proposals relating to race and racism in Tolkien's Legendarium. I think the nature of the attack would be different, and that there is another risk I believe your organization faces that you have apparently not considered.
Miss Reed, frankly, you can go fuck yourself. People telling you you're wrong, because you are in fact wrong and demonstrably so, is not the same as people attacking you. This is the oldest trick in the social justice activist book. Say something entirely ideologically warped and stupid, and then when people inevitably react to your ideological stupidity, like the ideological stupidity that it is, claim that you are being harassed because people are passionately and fervently disagreeing with you and pointing out to you that you have no legitimacy. And yes, that I guess does technically qualify as delegitimizing you, but not in the identitarian sense. In the sense that you don't know what you're talking about and therefore need to be treated like the idiot that you are. I'm going full Noxtaku here. We need to go back to referring to retards as retards as and when they are engaged in retardation. And no, I don't mean the actually differently mentally able. I mean people who have the capacity to not be an idiot, but gosh darn it, just don't feel like it. And so they deliberately ideologically warp themselves into idiots despite having the mental capacity to understand why and how they are wrong as and when they are corrected with passion. Moving on.
Of note, authorities have not determined a motive for the assassination, but did discover files promoting the left-wing No King rallies in the suspect's vehicle. Okay.
Again, you are conflating several things here. One, you are conflating conflating radical anarchist with the alt-right, which even when the alt-right was actually a thing, they didn't really ever go full anarchy, to the best of my knowledge. Richard Spencer had his...
Elton. That's the author making that point there of this article.
Okay, well, I don't really think the No Kings thing is of particular relevance either, and I don't think that the author of this article thinks it either, to his credit. But
okay.
But yeah, trying to act like being corrected by people on the internet because you're being dumb is the same as being worried that people are going to come and kill you is the very height of ideologically warped bullshit. Moving on.
Okay. Nevertheless, Reed continued, I am fairly sure any authoritarian attacks would be rhetorically similar to the first, specifically calling any scholar discussing race woke and accusing Tolkien of being racist. White members of far-right extremist group and a growing percentage of white people in the U.S. consider themselves the victims of racism rather than being racist themselves. My level of surety on this issue is related to them having already fielded those accusations in the earlier backlash, she added.
Sweetheart, given that Tolkien's use of the term race is more akin to Dungeons & Dragons' use of the term race, meaning an archaic word for species rather than a racial category like we have now, means that you are in fact wrong and woke for bringing up race in a context in which race, in the political sense, never becomes an issue. Like, never. Even the Easterlings, which again don't frequently get referenced in Tolkien, but are referenced at least some of the time, even the Easterlings eventually throw off the worship of Morgoth and try to seek some form of redemption. And they are the closest thing to people of color in the Tolkien Legendarium setting, so you have absolutely no reason for bringing racial context into Tolkien, because Tolkien evidently had very little space in his framework for race of any kind whatsoever. He was too busy trying to give the English a badass epic poem on the lines of Beowulf or on the lines of like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. That was the only racial representation, if you absolutely insist on calling it that Tolkien was interested in. He was interested in, hey, all these other Western European cultures have these founding myths that frequently verge into epic poetry mode. I want that for the English. And so he made one for the English using elements of the Anglo-Saxon culture, the Norse culture, the Germanic culture, and the British culture, and weaving them together accordingly. That, if you want to talk about Tolkien and representation, that's pretty much the only representation you have to point out. The fact that Tolkien wanted to create a founding myth for England and English culture. Moving on.
Sorry. She then chided the Tolkien Society for requesting that her abstract be changed. While I do not deny that the presenters and the society may become targeted again with this seminar, I think there is another greater risk you are facing, specifically an escalation of a pattern I see developing in recent seminars online that I interpret as showing a retreat from the commitment to greater diversity in the online seminars. As I understand it, this commitment became a goal of the society after a scholar of color described the racist attacks he experienced at Tolkien 2019 in Birmingham, UK.
You mean people told you in no uncertain terms and in very passionate tones that you were wrong and that you were ideologically warped and that you were stupid? That is not racism, you unctuous bint. That is you being wrong and being treated like everyone else online who is publicly and openly wrong. That's not harassment. That's just you being an idiot and therefore being treated like an idiot and expecting your academic superiority derp to save you when the average person on the internet has absolutely zero regard for my academic authority, especially when said academic is using that authority to say absolutely stupid shit, which you are. There is no cause for modern day capital D diversity in Tolkien. There is no cause for racial contextualization of any kind. And if anyone like Richard Spencer does genuinely try to appropriate Tolkien for the sake of the white race or some shit, I will be right there beside you decrying it. But frankly, unfortunately, Richard Spencer and J.F. Garapi was, and always have been utter effeminate hipster douches and laughingstocks basically everywhere they go, except the mainstream media. And the only reason the mainstream media treats them with any degree of seriousness is because they would rather believe that everyone who disagrees with them is a soft-core, effeminate hipster Nazi than believe that there are legitimate reasons to disagree with them, which there are. Namely, that it has nothing to do with Tolkien and bringing up topics like diversity or racial consciousness or gender consciousness or identitarian politics at all in Tolkien is nonsensical. Moving on.
All right. See this latest request for revision by the trustees and the CEO as failing to engage with a project that names whiteness as a part of systemic racism, a topic I identified as one of the gaps in Tolkien scholarship that needs to be addressed in my 2017 essay, Race in Tolkien Studies, a bibliographic essay. She wrote, "As a result, you may be risking the society continuing to enable the white-dominated nature of Tolkien scholarship."
The reason why Tolkien scholars are by and large of European and in particular Anglosphere diaspora is because Tolkien explicitly made the Legendarium in order to essentially be, for the English, what the Iliad and Odyssey are for the Greeks, what the sagas are for the Norse, or what Beowulf is to people of more Germanic side of the Anglo-Saxon descent. He threw together bits of the Norse sagas, bits of Beowulf, bits of other like Anglo-Saxon and Nordic myths, and bits of the Arthurian cycle, and basically made a founding myth for England. That's what he did. That is all he was trying to do. And insofar as Tolkien is capital W white, Tolkien himself did not intend it as such, because Tolkien fought in fucking both world wars. And frankly, if literally putting your life on the line to fight Nazis is not proof that you're not a white supremacist, I'm not sure what is. That's about as categorically not a white supremacist as you can get in like the modern historical context. Moving on.
As the set of views aren't one to do, she then projected. Tolkien's work and his religious identity have been appropriated by far-right extremists for decades. Unfortunately, for nearly the same decades, scholars have ignored this phenomenon, as I discuss in my note, The Problem of White Academia, recently published in Malorn.
I don't.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
One requirement to maintain systemic white/black racism is that whiteness, which is the default, is never named as a racialized category, because that naming undercuts its status as the default and natural state of being.
Believe it or not, most white people don't consider themselves capital W white, because most people in general are not race-obsessed cunts. Like, if you are such a vapid person that your race is in any way a central aspect of your identity, that is symptom number one of you being a twat. Like, I don't know why we even let this foundational premise be entertained. People who have more interesting shit going on in their lives do not obsess over their race. They don't need to steal valor from their skin tone or from the alleged the alleged worth of their ancestors, because they have actual merits and actual talents to speak of, and therefore are too busy doing cool shit and interesting shit and worthwhile shit to even think or care about their race. Tolkien being foremost among that same category, as I outlined already. Even in a time where explicit racial doctrines were sneaking their way into bastardizations of evolutionary theory, Tolkien appears just to not have had much like race consciousness of any kind, which, to be honest with you, I put as a point in his favor. He was too busy thinking about how cool various forms of mythology were, and various forms of literature were, and various forms of history were, to worry about race. And that is a far more correct position to take than to hyperfixate on race and gender and every other identitarian category under the sun that has nothing to do with your interests and personality. But while we're on the topic, you mentioned Tolkien's religion there. And while Tolkien was very obviously a Christian, because he was an Englishman of the early 20th century, and that was that just came with the cultural default. When you compare, for example, Tolkien's work with C.S. Lewis's work, C.S. Lewis was far more, like, painfully almost overt with his religion. I think one of the benefits that Tolkien has that C.S. Lewis does not have actually is because Tolkien could see the virtues of pre-Christian pagan cultures in Europe. He was able to craft a much more nuanced and three-dimensional world than C.S. Lewis was, because he couldn't avoid making biblical references at the drop of every hat. Whereas Tolkien, yes, did borrow a lot from Christianity, in particular borrowing a lot from the Arthurian mythos and the Grail type legends and so forth. He also had an immeasurable respect for the Viking era Norsemen, for the Normans and Anglo-Saxons before they converted to Christianity, for the ancient Celts, for basically all of Western European society and its influence on the Anglosphere. And that's one of the reasons why Tolkien's Legendarium is so much more well-liked than the Narnia books are. Because C.S. Lewis borrowed from Christianity and pretty much only Christianity, whereas Tolkien borrowed from anything and everything he thought was cool, which included a lot of non-Christian shit. Moving on.
Finally, she recommended that Tolkien Society CEO and trustees read an essay, Charles W. Mills, which she describes as the first essay on racism in Tolkien by a black scholar. Mills was an Afro-Jamaican philosopher of race. What do you make of Reed revealing that the Tolkien Society is attempting to hide its SJW infiltration?
I mean, it would be nice if they just rejected social justice as a phenomenon altogether. If we could just all come to terms with the idea of hyperfixating on race, gender, and sexuality is a vapid, meaningless thing that tends to ruin everything it touches, especially when tied with neo-Hegelian ideologies that demonize merit and call them somehow predominantly linked with the Western mind or the Western way of doing things. I think any ideology that sees merit and the concept of meritocracy as a problem is itself a problem, and especially as it applies to things like culture and art. Because if you don't make good art, I don't care what ideological gobbledygook you do, and I explicitly don't care about any ideology that actually facilitates anti-meritocracy and the demonization of things like the virtues of aesthetics, the virtues of storytelling, the virtues of caring about your in-universe implications when you create a fictional setting, goddammit. Or even if you create a pseudo fictional setting or something. I'm gonna default back to my usual rant here. We need to go back to a time where socio-political and moral themes are again treated like the tertiary irrelevant shtick they are when art is concerned. The first and foremost priority of building any piece of art, any piece of fiction, any piece of storytelling is in-universe logic, in-universe mechanics, in-universe implications, and in-universe characterization, which again is one of the things that Tolkien excels at, especially as compared to his friend and contemporary C.S. Lewis, because C.S. Lewis couldn't avoid getting his Bible trapped in every canard that he wrote himself into. And that's one of the reasons Tolkien is so much more well-liked than C.S. Lewis, because C.S. Lewis seemed to doggedly insist on bringing the Bible into every corner, whereas Tolkien brought the Bible or Christianity in when it organically made sense to him, and was also willing to do the same with pagan and European and pre-Christian European influences. That's one of the reasons I think Tolkien is better, not just because I, as a polytheist, find references to polytheism more pleasing, but because it allows the thematic and artistic influences to be where they belong in the background, and allows the world you're creating to be much more well-rounded and three-dimensional, which is always a good thing in art. Well-rounded and three-dimensional stories, good. Doggedly insisting on a unilateral interpretation of your art or forcing it down the reader's throat is shit no matter who does it.
You done?
Yep.
All right. For the record, I sent you something in private chat.
Yeah, I saw.
Okay, moving on. Next thing then.
Mhm.
All right, give me a sec. All right, so for this from ScreenRant.com. The Boys star says taking the Batman role in live action would be terrifying. It's written by Andy Behabak. Again, if I say names wrong, I'm sorry. I'm terrible with names.
Mm-hmm.
It's published June 20th, 2025. All right. Yeah. Sorry, I was just checking something real quick. All right. Jensen Ackles opened up. Jensen Ackles opens up potentially joining James Gunn's DC universe as Batman in The Brave and the Bold. Following the numerous occasions of Gunn reaffirming that the DCU's Batman won't be Robert Pattinson, which feels like a missed opportunity. I don't want to say fuck you to Matt Reeves because he's a fantastic director and made a really good Batman, but still.
It was a pompous, self-serving choice to not weave your Batman into a DC universe, and we need to stop. We need to stop obsessively sectioning things off and let things exist in the universes they exist in. Damn it!
All right. Many are waiting to see who will actually don the cape and cowl in DC Studios' new superhero franchise. One of the popular choices for Bruce Wayne in Gunn's DC reboot is Jensen Ackles, who made a name for himself for fan favorite series like Supernatural and The Boys. He even voiced the Cape Crusader in DC's short-lived animated Tomorrowverse franchise, with fans wanting to see Ackles cast as DCU's Batman. After addressed those discussions in a new interview.
I happen to be on this team, frankly, especially given that especially given that we know James Gunn is not above doing stunt casting, although he needs to look at the fine print of his stunt casting because he puts people in roles that people don't actually want them in, like making Nathan Fillion Guy Gardner instead of Hal Jordan for no explicable reason. That being said, Jensen Ackles definitely has the physical presence necessary to play Batman, and we've already had him prove that he can play the character in animation. So I don't see why he shouldn't play Batman.
Also, hold on, can I? It's not that I don't. It's one thing. I think maybe 5 or even like 10 years younger Jensen Ackles would have been perfect. I'm not saying he's not perfect now, obviously. I'm just saying, like,
I agree that it's a little bit late, but James wants a older Batman anyway, as evidenced by the whole Damian Wayne of it all. So,
okay,
why not?
Nothing against Damian Wayne. It's just like it's so dumb, man. Because there's whatever. I'm not.
There's several other Robins that would have made more sense, but yeah, we've been around the houses on that point many times over.
All right. While speaking with Collider, Jensen Ackles was asked what kind of live-action Batman he would want to play in the DCU franchise. If he got the chance, Ackles would be open about wanting to play the Dark Knight in live-action. Shared the following: I don't know. It would be hard to carve out something truly unique amongst all the performances as Batman. I'd probably have to lean heavily on Gunn and whoever's directing and whoever's writing it, and get inspiration from the text. Yeah, that's okay. That's fair. That's actually pretty fair, and
Yeah, that's a
I respect how.
surprisingly intelligent that's a surprisingly intelligent and nuanced take on that issue, actually.
Although, if I were to, okay, hmm, it's fascinating. I don't know what kind of. I mean, honestly, because the performance he gave for, the Tomorrowverse Batman, Long Halloween and stuff, I think I could definitely see that. Obviously, if he's playing an older a Batman that is older from that specific one, uh, I think it's hard to say, honestly. Like,
I mean,
obviously,
go ahead. Sorry.
well, I could see him a lot more. Honestly, I would love to see more inspiration taken from, like, maybe Dark Victory, which is the sequel to Long Halloween, where has Robin in it, like, and it shows Bruce kind of being more of a open and family kind of oriented guy, which we don't see that often, and it fucking sucks. Because
Yeah,
okay, sorry,
the
this is a little tangent I want to get on.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I know I've kind of been more of the Superman guy in recent years, and not just, but Batman he was one of the first superheroes I was ever introduced to, right? Growing up,
Ditto.
right?
I actually ended up, I think, breaking the Tim Burton Batman VHSs because I watched them so much as a kid.
Yeah, I had those little DVDs and those really, when DVDs those really crappy, like cardboard
cases.
Yeah, God, honestly, more design and effort put into those than the.
I mean, I of course more strongly remember VHSs because there's about a 4-year difference between us. But I remember when the transition from VHS to DVD happened. It was very weird because after a certain point you just couldn't get VHSs anymore, and it was kind of weird as a kid.
But back to my little tangent. I get why everyone wants the brooding, like, loner detective thing. I get that. But to be fair, the thing I grew up most in terms of Batman was the Batman. I didn't really watch. I remember I watched. Okay, I watched that along with, like, Justice League Unlimited. Like, those two, watched the most of growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw Batman more.
Yeah, which of course goes back to the aforementioned difference between us, because anyone my age or young or older than me grew up on the animated series.
Right.
I also watched the Batman. Don't get me wrong; it was one of my favorite things to watch on Saturday morning cartoons. But go ahead.
Yeah, you're good. What I was gonna say was, so I remember him being more open and more, less of a brooding loner and more of a guy who leans in on others. Granted, DCAU Batman kind of didn't do that too much, but so I am speaking more so on my memories of the Batman cartoon. But Batman, like, yes, that's where he starts, being that brooding loner and all that. But with the introduction of Robin, with the
Family.
Yeah, with the Bat Family, and I've heard people say he doesn't need a Bat Family or a Bat. I could see the argument with the Bat Family gets too expansive. Sure, kind of. I think the issue is, like, they don't really establish. It's more a rotating roster than anything instead of like an established.
I'm of two minds on it myself, because frankly, I would like to see him build a Bat Family rather than automatically already have it, and that's, I think, one of the major issues with the way James Gunn is choosing to do a quote unquote already established universe.
Okay, yeah,
you could still do that and yet have the characters grow into more comfortable roles. That's one of the reasons why jumping straight to Damian Wayne vexes me, because maybe this is a generational thing.
Actually, no, I see that point. I see that point, yeah.
but I grew up on Dick Grayson, and so did like 90% of my generation. And it does seem weird to jump right to Damien, considering
Right.
he's the kid of the Bat family paradigm. That being said, and maybe this is kind of a recency bias thing, I have grown to really enjoy um, YouTube shorts based on Tumblr posts where there was a focus on the Bat family. So I'm more inclined to being okay with a Bat family than I probably ever have been in my entire life, if they actually
Yeah.
build the family dynamics, which is the important part of a Bat family if you need to do one.
And I agree. I agree with you. What I was gonna say was, fucking Christ, I just had it.
Sorry.
No, you good. Like, you basically were saying things I was gonna say in a much more cohesive manner. Um, right. I mean, it is kind of Bruce's art because he lost his family as a kid, and very much isolated himself growing up.
And he's
even
still
in his
carrying the scars of that. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Dalton. And as he started, his Batman career, he was very much like that, and honestly could have gone even further or darker in his isolation and suffering and pain. And I've seen stories, both official, fan made, and stuff of the like, explore that. And it is very much terrifying if he doesn't have that support system. And for one thing, when Batman is written properly, he knows that about himself, hence why he even does start to do it. I mean, to be fair, it's also because all the people that gravitate towards him to make the Bat family, people that have similar scars or brokenness that Batman himself have helped heal better than because he never really got that. I mean, Alfred sort of did help, but
did the best he could.
It wasn't
but
enough.
There's only so much one man can do, no matter how base and awesome Alfred is, and he is like,
yeah.
And I think I speak for every Batman fan in the known universe when I say that's why the relationship between Alfred and Bruce needs to be a father-son relationship that doesn't fully acknowledge itself as a father-son relationship. That's why one of my favorite scenes in Tim Burton's Batman is the scene where Alfred tells Bruce off and says, if I can remember the phrasing, I have no intention of spending my remaining years what is the it's been so long since I've seen this, but it's such a great scene, and I'm annoyed at myself for forgetting the phrasing. I have no intention of spending my remaining years grieving for the loss of old friends or their sons. Something along those lines. But that has always been my favorite scene in that movie, because that is the moment where you realize, oh, right, Alfred has been the parent for all those years and helped him through all the Batman stuff.
Yeah. I was gonna say something. Right. Going back to the family thing is like, yes, when he builds that is one showing the development of his character. It's why, like Robin specifically, obviously that's the first step for him, accepting someone who also has gone through this and helping them go past that pain, so they don't become as obsessed or destructive or damaged as
Jaded.
he is. That's why Robin, yeah, that's why Dick Grayson became Nightwing, has become a prevalent hero in his own right, and is seen as kind of symbolically, at least, as a Superman kind of character in the generation that he is with heroes. More or less, it's You get what I mean, though, right? Like,
In the sense that Dick is a much happier person.
yeah, I believe
Which
Bruce said it once. Is that hold on? Can I?
go ahead. Sorry.
Bruce said it once. Is that Nightwing is what Batman was supposed to be.
And don't get me wrong, Batman should still be the dark counterpart to Superman. There is no cause for going like full Silver Age with it. But if you insist on jumping the line and starting with Damian, which again, a really stupid and counterintuitive decision.
To be fair, so I do want to point this out. Just because Damian, because some people have made this, and I honestly could see it, and I think it would be interesting nonetheless. If instead of Bruce Wayne Batman, I know you're going to roll your eyes at this, but because the most prevalent duo that had Damian as a Robin was Grant Morrison's run of Batman and Robin, which was Dick Grayson as Batman and Damian Wayne, because some people have made the idea, have said that Damian was more Dick Grayson's Robin than he was Bruce's, even though he is Bruce's son.
I mean, go ahead.
I think if they wanted to be different and not confuse people with there being another Bruce Wayne Batman in the DCU while Matt Reeves is doing Bruce Wayne Batman with the Batman, it could possibly work to have Dick Grayson be Batman here. I know you're not going to be fully sold on that.
As a storytelling device, it can work. We need to market this universe to people who will actually buy it and pay for it and watch it, that's never going to work. You are never going to sell average Joe Blow on the street starting with Dick as Batman. You might maybe be able to convince people a couple of years down the road, whenever the Batman actor ages out, to accept Dick as the successor. But starting with Dick as the successor in the opening salvo is a immediate DOA decision. That is dead on arrival, and you are not going to get anyone in this, any normie, or how like 2/3 of the Batman fandom aren't even going to be on your side with that. So, as a storytelling device, it can work. As a thing we need to make money with, no, that's DOA.
I mean, I'm a little iffy on that, but I see your point. I kind of see. I kind of agree with it. I also want to say, I'm going to be fully honest. I do kind of say fuck the Batman fandom. Those guys are kind of, they're almost as bad as the Snyder cultists.
Yeah, the Snyder Bros. Yeah,
Snyder Bros. But
that being said, we do still have to make money with this DC universe, and you can't make money
understand.
with that.
I know. I understand. I understand. Just it's a potential idea there.
Right. It's just, again, I'm fine with the idea of eventually transitioning to Dick, and I think if it was well written enough, you could sell that. But it's never going to work, as Bruce is already gone and Dick is already in the suit as the opening move.
Okay, you know what? That's fair. That's really fair. I honestly could see maybe like we do the first introduction movie of that being Bruce, and then maybe in the middle of the second movie we have that change.
I would play it safe and wait till the end of a trilogy. And then once the Batman actor has completed his trilogy, you pass the mantle to Dick, and then you can go from there.
Okay. I wasn't disagreeing with you. I'm just... Okay. But, okay, getting back to the Bat Family thing. Again, I agree. We honestly should see it be built. Because for one thing, again, with the arc of Batman, I think him establishing the Bat Family is also what helps him be able to be part of a team like the Justice League.
It's where he learns to trust people again. Or at all, frankly.
Can I... what yeah, for him to work with the Justice League, be part of that, to uh, unless you do the Tower of Babel thing, which I don't think is a bad story. I just think it makes Batman seem like such an asshole.
Yeah, and speaking of storylines that work good on paper but are antimatter for marketing, making Batman that much of an asshole
Well,
is
okay,
not going to endear a lot of people, I think.
the issue with Tower of Babel is that it frames that the moments that he's talked to, like, the Leaguers, like just other personal stuff, he was never actually being genuine with them, and only used that as ways of knowing their weaknesses. And he kept that from, like that's even made a point of contention, is that they were fine with the contingencies, but it was the fact that he kept a secret from them. That was more Wonder Woman than anything.
In Bruce's defense here, a contingency plan that the person you're building contingencies for already knows about is a compromised contingency plan. For it to have its maximum effectiveness, he actually does need to keep it secret from them so that they're not able to think of ways around his contingencies. That's the risk you run if you tell people about your contingencies for them, because they might have time to think of a way around your contingencies if they know they already exist.
Hold on. Not the specific contingencies, just that he had them. That was it. That was the problem.
Okay, I can kind of see that. I still would play devil's advocate a little bit and say, as a tactician, you never tell your potential interlocutor in a battle that you have a plan for them, because it does it in the cold light of, Sun Tzu's Art of War. That is hampering yourself unnecessarily. I'm not saying it doesn't make him a dick. I'm just saying I can see in the Batman mind why telling them was a non-starter.
Right, but the whole manipulating them to learn their weaknesses, I think, I think we can both agree, is just fucked up.
I mean, there are ways you could write that where it could work, in that he could be also trying to get to know them, but simultaneous. Because Batman, being Batman, is the, monarch of contingencies, and therefore I can see him going and being like, oh, I learned this thing about them today while we were talking. I'm going to make a note of that for later.
You know what? I just realized something. You are a borderline sociopath that honestly would work the brain like Batman. So I feel like doing it with you really doesn't yield results.
Well, but the thing is, it is very much in the framing of a Tower of Babel story. If he is also opening up to them and then uses what he learned when he opens up to build the contingencies, I think that's fine. You just need to make the point of, it wasn't only for the contingencies. It was in addition to the contingencies. There also needs to be this element of humanization with it. Which, again, Batman is a gifted enough tactician that he can multitask, so it's fine. But it is very much an issue of framing. Making it seem like he is getting to know people just for the contingencies is a sociopathic thing to do. But if he learns information about them, and then, in the privacy of the Batcave after the day's work is done, also makes a mental note of this or a physical note of it so that he can build a contingency for them around it, that can work. You just have to make sure that the audience is aware that he is both opening up and getting to know them, and using what he learns practically so as to make the contingencies. It's an and not an or is the main issue here. Making it an or does make him seem like a remorseless sociopath. Making it a and scenario, though, works. Moving on.
I honestly forget that you're not a good person.
How many more times in every live stream do I have to say it? I am not and have never been a good and decent person. I have very little use for morality, and most of my thing that I have in place of morality has more to do with things like propriety and order and hospitality and shit than it does anything resembling a moral impetus. I bound myself deliberately to the Queen of Air and Darkness, the unseelie Fae. Unseelie meaning unholy. This should not be this controversial. I bound myself to she who rules over the cold, remorseless savagery of winter, and I did so because I thought we had stuff in common that would make us a good team together and would make me willing to serve her. And I have never once lied to you about it, just for the record. So you don't even have the where you didn't tell me about the contingencies excuse. Because I've been telling you about my worst tendencies from day one. Moving on.
To be fair, given how you talk and stuff, it honestly just comes more as like you trying to be, like a kid trying to act tough.
Again, I explicitly bound myself to Queen Mab, and I have never once lied to any of my friends about this issue.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, it's like I said, I don't exactly. It's not that I don't take you seriously. Obviously, I do. It's just when you always like you're a bad person, I never really get it or see it. That could be me just being hopelessly naive and believing that there's always good in people.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, but it might be you projecting your goodness onto me. That's why I frequently point out that you are very much in the Superman or Captain America mold of goodness. Because you are so good by default that you don't even realize most of it.
I really wouldn't go that far, man.
I know you wouldn't, but I'm calling it as I see it. You are so good by default that you don't even realize it for the most part.
Don, I'm on a hair trigger of going absolutely insane and going on a murderous rampage, like every day.
Uh-huh.
You have no idea the amount of shit I have had to bury inside.
I know, but nevertheless, you still are so good that you don't realize it. At your very worst, you might have a Punisher or Casey Jones style day, but that's about it. That's about as bad as your shit is, sir. And I'm not busting your balls over it. I admire your capacity to be that good as someone who knows full well that he is not a good person and notices what that means and notices the lack of it. I admire your ability to be that good, but I don't have it. Never have.
You want to talk about the importance? I'm doing well, Giant. Yeah, Giant Turtle's here. He's an hour late, so close to an hour and a half actually. So
you'll get good. Caught up, DT. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm doing good. So, yeah, I went on to talk about the importance of the role and the responsibility that comes with it, saying, you talk about not wanting to fumble the football, that's one that I would be nervous as hell to carry, also proud, certain feather in the cap. Anybody who gets to wear the cowl, they got something. I mean, the guy actually did make his own like Batman cosplay and has a bunch of photos online about it, so. Thank you, Giant. Like, fucking Christ.
To be fair, all of the founding fathers of America were Brits, so let's not act like there is no British influence on American culture. That being
I'm a
said,
bitch, not you motherfucker.
fuck
You
the
ain't
red
gonna say
coat.
that shit.
It's
Yep.
true though, and I don't care how badly you beat me for saying true things. They still are true things.
Just because it's true doesn't mean I want to hear it.
Point. But
All right.
I am not going to stop saying it because it's true. And I do my best
when the
to
interviewer,
not speak untruths where possible.
to be fair, you also need to learn how not to speak or when not to speak. But then again, you're you, so you're never gonna know that.
Yeah, I don't change. I made very explicitly sure that I don't change. It is a whole thing regarding the aforementioned bargain with the Queen of Air and Darkness.
If you don't change or adapt, then sooner or later you are going to get passed by, right? You do know that, right? That's
No,
the way it works.
growth and change are not the same thing. In fact, in my lexicon, they are the opposite of each other. A tree naturally grows into a tree, regardless of outside circumstance. It only changes if you go out of your way to twist its growth cycle into another direction entirely, and thus break the continuity in some significant sense. For me, change and growth are not synonyms, they are opposites. I made it very explicit in my bargain with Mab that the kind of change that I want protection from is not is not related to growth. Growth is still something I am entirely capable of. Change, however, I am mercifully spared from, thanks to the aegis of the Queen of Air and Darkness.
You're a weird dude.
Never denied any aspect of it.
When the interviewer told Ackles they'd be crossing their fingers for him to get a chance to play Batman, he quickly responded, "I'll cross them too. Just say the word." What Jensen Ackles' Batman comments mean? Apparently, Ackles hasn't ruled out the chance to star as Batman in DCU. Actually, it would be fun if he kind of did get to play similar sticks. By the way, you guys talking about stick?
The Styx Hex and Hammer thing. No, that doesn't come up in today's live stream. It didn't.
Okay.
Styx Hex and Hammer is a YouTuber. He's also a magical practitioner, and he's gotten into some drama recently. And I assume that's why Dragon Turtle asked if we were covering it. I didn't think it was a big enough story yet to warrant covering it, DT.
Okay. Based on his comments, it seems like Ackles is still game to star in the DCU's coming Batman movie, though it may come down to the vision for the film. But since Ackles is a fan himself, he may be interested in the Brave and Bold's direction. The movie will tackle Bruce being a father to Damian Wayne, which hasn't been done in live action. I mean, we got that New 52 one.
Yeah, I still maintain that starting with Damian was a mistake.
Mm-hmm. The Brave and the Bold will also follow a version of Batman who is further along his journey as Gotham City's protector, which would make Ackles a good fit for Bruce. It's not wrong. Again, the biggest thing is like for an actor to play Batman. Batman, I think, is a very easy character to get right. Bruce Wayne, I think, is legitimately the hardest one to do.
Insofar as there are distinctions between them, which there probably should be.
No, okay. For one thing, let me explain this just so people aren't confused. Batman overall is basically like a classic noir pulp detective, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
Stoic, analytical, super genius.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you want to add it, bottle of rage and almost just a lot of rage or
Incarnation
cold.
of trauma itself.
Yeah, yeah. Bruce Wayne has basically, well, he's a multifaceted character, mind you, but because you got the Bruce that is with people he trusts, which often comes out when he is Batman. He's very like relaxed, very calm. At times a goofball, depending on iteration of Batman you're talking about.
Well, it also depends on how much of a front Bruce puts on, because there is a
That's what I was
distinction
going to talk about
between
the persona.
there's a
That's what I
distinction
was going to talk
between.
with.
Go ahead.
All right, I was going to thank you for the segue there. I was going to also bring up the persona that he often projects to the public, which are two. There are two very distinct personas that he does. One is obviously the philanthropist, constantly trying to help people and kindness and all that. Which again, a lot of the aspects of his personas or personality do influence every other one. Batman, Bruce Wayne, the philanthropist, and Bruce Wayne, the public celebrity playboy, yada yada. Granted, that one I think kind of starts to dissolve and go away after his 20s, maybe into his 30s a bit, when he starts to get more of his Batman.
Especially after the Bat family, and of course in his Bruce Wayne identity, he does start adopting kids so that it can actually make sense with the Bat family without ringing too many bells.
Right.
For the media. Not that the media would ever catch Batman in this day and age. If the media were ever a competent journalist, that day has long since died a slow and painful death. So in a modern day set DC universe, Batman has nothing to worry about. He's fighting journos, not journalists, for the most part.
I recently saw like some test footage. I don't think it's an official game. It might be a fan game of a Batman horror game where you're playing from the perspective of the criminals, and Batman's hunting you down.
Mm-hmm. That would certainly be an interesting. That would certainly be an interesting game, and it kind of reminds me of what I wanted from Joker 2 and a potential Joker 3, which of course will never exist because Joker 2 was shit. But I came up with the idea a long time ago after seeing the Joker movie, the first one, of seeing the Batman as almost like creepypasta or cryptid type creature from Arthur's perspective.
Actually, yeah, some people have pitched that before. There's a guy called the Panda Red. He's a TikToker, but he's also has a YouTube thing. He's done skits recently. He hasn't really done that, but a few years back, he's a graphic designer as well. Like that's kind of his job. Went to college and all that for it. He actually did some concept photos of a Batman horror movie. Similar premise as I described the
game.
Thank you. Where it's told from the perspective of criminals, a specific one that just. Anyway, it's the perspective of Batman, who we wouldn't know it, but like obviously early days Batman, right, where he's more seen as like a cryptid or anything like that. But like footage where it's all staticky and stuff, and you see just the silhouette of Batman with the glowing white eyes. And I think he said, obviously the characters in the movie wouldn't know it, but Batman just has like some tech that disrupts any type of surveillance or any images that would see him that make him look.
So instead, he'd be playing it off as like a Mothman style, like anti-technology aura.
Yeah.
Interesting. Which I guess they kind of did a little bit in the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight with the whole bat sonar tech thing. Kind of.
Kind of. Um, to be fair, I would actually love to see, obviously, superheroes or vigilante characters that have horror elements to them. To be fair, I would just love to see a horror movie about a superhero, not Brightburn or anything, but like a superhero that uses fear or something like that.
Which, to be fair, that's ostensibly the premise that Batman is supposed to be operating under. The criminals are a superstitious, cowardly lot, so I will make their fear my weapon, etc.
I mean, the analog horror series on YouTube that focuses on that Batman. To be fair, it's a Batman that kind of lost his fucking mind. For died a week after his parents did from a heart attack.
I mean,
so like that anchor of emotional support. So
I,
slowly went.
I mean, to be fair, also, my self-insert character for the Lionhearted, we don't really focus on it much when we're doing the writing for him, but that is at least ostensibly one of my self-insert character for the Lionhearted's gimmicks, especially with the whole preventing based on a true story horror movie scenarios thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, moving on, because this is only the second topic, and we still have like 3 others to go.
Yeah. With Ackles' track records and for DC Studios now to at least consider him as a serious candidate for the Batman role. Since Gunn confirmed that the DCU's Batman casting search has not started yet, because the script is still being worked on, a lot can happen between now and then when they actually start holding auditions. The idea that Ackles and Gunn could have conversations about the Brave and the Bold in the meantime is definitely possible, especially after the actor's latest comments. Our take on Jensen Ackles' Batman comments. Ackles will at least have a chance to be considered for the iconic role. After hearing how Ackles would want to approach playing Batman in the DCU, seeing him get the chance to play the superhero in live action would be a dream casting come true. With David Cornsworth bringing Krypton's Last Son back to the big screen this summer, this would be an ideal combination of DCU's Superman and Batman. Time will tell how it will be until DC Studios starts looking for its next Dark Knight, and it will depend on when the script is actually completed. Hopefully, once the Brave and the Bold gets to casting their new Batman, Axe will at least have a chance to be considered for the iconic superhero role.
And again, we know James Gunn is open to fan casting, however warped and misguided his notion of fan casting might be sometimes. So it is entirely possible. I see no reason why he shouldn't. So I am definitely on team just get Jensen to do it.
Okay, I'm trying to. Sorry. Since we're to be fair, it's kind of a DC thing this week. So
yeah, there's a lot of coverage of DC stuff this week.
Yeah. But I am. I know last week I talked about like saving the Trinity and stuff, and like some of the characters that were used in the DCEU for later. Just give some time for like other characters to shine in DCU.
Let the heat go off them for a while.
Yeah. Because James Gunn's usual weapon, like kind of cabinet, is using more slightly less more obscure kind of characters, and that's why I suggested like doing like the Justice League International more so. Which kind of seemed like they're setting up with like some of the characters and stuff in the DCU right now. So,
I mean, I really wish we knew what the other half of Gods and Monsters was. Because I'm me, of course, my question is, will there be any Gods and Monsters in this storyline that's called Gods and Monsters? Because I really would be annoyed if there were no Gods and Monsters in this thing that you're calling Gods and Monsters. To be fair,
right,
we do have the beginnings of the implications there because Swamp Thing is a thing, so the other half might be more God and monster related, I hope.
So, But if we're okay, so I'm just okay. This is going to be top of the head here before we move on to the next thing. How I know I've done this a few times, but I just had an idea spur on as we were reading that.
Mm-hmm.
So okay. So I'm just going to talk mainly the first phase, which would kind of be a little bit long, relatively.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, okay. So I would keep David Cornsmith as Superman because I think he is a good choice for relatively young Superman. It's not that I don't want to go with a younger Batman, but just because I do like Jensen Ackles and I do legitimately think he would be a good Batman.
Yeah, no, he'd be really good at it, I think.
Yeah, I
Like
do kind of want to have.
there was even that one episode in Supernatural where he literally pulls the "because I'm Batman" line.
Yeah, but also his voice work for. I mean, to be fair, he voiced Jason Todd first, which was good, and that was when he was younger, and that worked. In Batman Hood.
And I think it's fairly obvious from most of his work and most of his comments that he just is naturally a Batman fan, which
Yeah,
is a good thing for a casting when you can get someone who both physically resembles the character and who wants to be there and wants to play the character. Granted, you
right.
could have had that with Henry if you didn't Snyder him, but oh well.
Right. I kind of would do, but okay, so okay, and hear me out on this.
Okay.
So I would just because it's me and I just want to have a basis for the movies, and obviously I would do some stuff differently comparative to the storylines I would be adapting. So for a Superman movie, which would be the first movie that comes out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would adapt Superman for All Seasons, which was written by Jeff Loeb. Hold on, actually, just so I'm not talking on my ass, I did recently get that book. Well, relatively recently, and it's just a good origin story for Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jeff Loeb was written by. Yeah, it's a coming of age tale following the experiences and adventures that turn a country boy into the world's greatest hero. Is the overview of it.
I've heard of it, but I've obviously never read it because Superman just isn't in my wheelhouse.
No, that's fair, but it is considered one of the best ones, like best stories of Superman.
Yeah, I do know that it gets referenced a lot and that it's relatively on the same par as What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way.
I would also say All Star, and it's only 4 issues. It's a 4-issue miniseries, well, limited series. And for all seasons, you got summer or spring, summer, fall, winter. And most of the time, it's actually not even told from the perspective of Superman, but from other characters and how they view Superman and stuff. But
I think James Gunn referenced it on Twitter once as one of the influences he's going with. Because I know he mentioned All Star. I know he mentioned What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, and I'm pretty sure he mentioned Superman for All Seasons too.
either way, I would say that would be more so the at whole inspiration, more so like the central basis for the movie. And for Batman, see, that is tricky because I don't want to do Long Halloween. One, because the animated movies came out and they're fantastic on those, and two, that's always the one that's referenced, especially when you're doing somewhat of an origin.
Plus, Matt Reeves kind of already took some inspiration from that with his Batman.
Yeah, kind of.
Which, to be fair, that's correct because that's a good basis. But yeah, so that we're not ripping off him too much is the thing.
Right. What I would want to do, and since this is a little older Batman, kind of a little more established, right? Full adaptation of Batman Ego.
I don't think I've ever read that.
It was written by the guy who did just DC New Frontier. Written and drawn by. Hold on. Yeah, Darwin Cook, written by Darwin Cook. It's Bruce Wayne's internal struggle with his Batman persona. Basically, he's fighting for control. Like he has kind of a mental break after a certain.
Yeah. Also, speaking of Darwin Cook, may he rest in peace.
Oh,
Even
dude,
though his
that,
even though his widow doesn't like us, nevertheless, may he rest in peace.
yeah. But it's a weird and trippy one because it delves into Batman's actual psyche, like in his mind. It's a whole mental thing, so it would get in the weird visuals that you're all about, Dalton.
Which would be that reminds me of in the Brave and the Bold TV show when they kind of adapt the Emperor Joker storyline by having Batmite's powers go to the Joker by accident. I love I love the moment where he's able to basically strip the Joker of the reality bending imp powers by sheer just force of mental discipline and control. That's one of my favorite Batman moments.
Oh yeah, honestly, Brave and the Bold is an underrated Batman series. I think
It is. There's a lot of really good moments in there, and there's a lot of really interesting. In particular, it focuses a lot on other characters' dynamics with Batman. Granted, I really desperately wish we could have gotten a better Doctor Fate, but que sera, sera.
All right, just take a breath.
I know it's just like it could imagine an actually well written Doctor Fate that wasn't reliant on the possession retcon
They
episode.
they didn't do possession for him in
They did because in one of the cold open segments, Wotan was able to depower the wearer of the helm by removing the helm. And that's not how Kent Nielsen or any of the actual magic user Dr. Fate's powers work, because they, are able to rely on their own magic. God damn it.
Right. Okay, but it's Batman Ego. That would be the adaptation for the specific Batman Superman story, Batman story for a movie, because it confronts Batman's moral code and whether he should abandon crime fighting or take it to the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not gonna lie, I wanted to culminate, like, I want to first do a team up movie, World's Finest, because fucking Christ, we need that.
Yeah, speaking of things that the DC animated universe did that they should have shamelessly stolen if they actually were willing to make a good DC universe. Because frankly, guys, and I mean this with all the love in my heart that I can muster for you, Warner Brothers, you will never, in the history of storytelling, you will never create anything better than the Paul Dini, Bruce Timm DC animated universe.
Right.
And bearing in mind that you will never create something better than it, what you should have done is shamelessly copied its homework and adapted it in live action. That's what you should have done.
And then that would lead to the kind of end of the first phase, which would have been Batman, Superman, Public Enemies. Although, actually, I don't know if that would work unless you build up a bunch of other heroes and villains. To be fair, I have not read fully I've not really read it. I remember watching the cartoon movie when it came out. I feel like that's got a lot more history to it, so
I still maintain that.
So it might just be just a World's Finest to end the first phase.
Yeah. I still maintain that you should have done at least the first 7 Justice League members like MCU Phase 1 did and give them each their individual movies before they cross over.
Right. Honestly, it could be a World's Finest with adding Wonder Woman in like the midpoint or something, and have it kind of be secretly a Trinity movie.
Yeah,
because it's never okay. To be fair, it's gonna also no, we're gonna move on because I'm gonna get into my gripes of how they've handled Wonder Woman over the basically just fucking She is part of the Trinity, and she does not get the respect she fucking deserves. I'm
No.
not the big look. I'm gonna be fully honest. I might not know everything about Wonder Woman, but I feel if she is one of the members of the official Trinity of DC. Like she is on most of the promotional material when you talk about the Trinity of DC Comics, and yet she does not get as much either fanfare or anything like that.
There's also a practical reason why the Trinity makes sense from just a world building perspective, because each member of the Trinity essentially introduces a different side of the DC universe. Superman handles all the alien and sci-fi shit. Batman is the street level vigilante detective angle, the inheritance of the noir detective pulps. And then of course Wonder Woman gets into mystical and magical and mythical scenarios. So by focusing on by starting a DC universe with the Trinity specifically, you get, okay, this universe has aliens and sci-fi shit. It has all the inheritance from the detective pulps with Batman, and it has magical stuff because Wonder Woman exists. If you can balance the Trinity like that, you can bring in all the necessary elements, or you can justify post hoc all the necessary elements for every other character in the DC universe. Granted, you could do the same thing starting with the Justice Society, because the Justice Society also features a heavy mix of all three of those things. But assuming that you're not, my level of geek, which fair enough, a lot of people aren't, you can still get away with setting up all the necessary world building with a character heavily based on sci-fi, a character heavily based on pulp and detective noir inheritance from that comic books inherited from the pulps, and you can have a character based specifically on mythology, magic, and mysticism. That would be a very easy and straightforward way to do. Okay, here are all the elements we're playing with in miniature, and now we're going to explore them in more depth later.
Right, and it's gonna sound weird because I do like. Also, I legitimately think we should cut out the idea of Wonder Woman having a sword and a shield and stuff, because
she doesn't need them.
No, I mean bracers, right? But also the lasso and stuff. But she's a warrior of peace, and I think it's kind of counterintuitive to her mission.
Yeah, you can either bring peace or a sword, to call back to the biblical phrasing.
I'm uncertain about the general basis of her character that was created in the 40s, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind. I think it's not a weird perspective. I think it's an interesting perspective that the creator had for her. Mm-hmm. I do think the elements of
BDSM.
I was trying to be fit. I was trying to be vague.
In 2025, BDSM is not even remotely the kinkiest thing that happens on the internet, folks.
Fair enough. I don't know if it's technically. I don't know if it's necessary for the character. Because for one thing, I think the weakness that was created is weird.
The binding the bracelets together thing.
By any man, yeah.
Yeah. I agree. It doesn't really work. I could see it maybe working if you changed it so that she has to be tied up with her own lasso. And the submission angle can then be an extension of the obedience of the lasso itself. that would make more sense and would be a little bit less like kinky, so to speak. Like more focused on the in-universe reason and less on the out-of-universe reason. If you know what I mean.
Also, it's weird. I kind of hate the demigoddess thing, and I just would prefer the origin that they have of that she was born from clay.
Yeah, I don't know why they're not willing to. I mean, she is the daughter of the queen of the Amazons. You can still like be demigod adjacent if you have a god help Hippolyta to sculpt her, like Hades in the DC animated universe, or like Zeus in other media, and so on.
Well, to be fair,
it would still make the strength and everything make sense.
Well, Amazons themselves are just inherently,
they're demigoddesses. Anyway.
So, like, I don't really necessarily think you gotta involve any of the gods per se. So,
well, like, I think you have to involve at least one of them because one of them has to bring her to life.
Right. I'm just saying though, I don't think like what the idea you suggested, I don't think is necessary. I think in helping with the creation and like bringing her to life, sure, but the sculpting of her, I think that should be done specifically with.
Yeah, no, that can be Hippolyta's gift alone. I'm not opposed to that. I just think it is interesting to have one of her parents essentially be one of the Greek divines. I personally find it more interesting if Hades is the one who does it rather than Zeus being the one to do it. Because Hera already has enough cause to take him to fucking divorce court. We don't need to give Zeus yet another dalliance.
What if it was sorry.
And two, there's a thing I like about the idea of Hades doing it, which is that means that there's a part of Wonder Woman that could be violent and dangerous, but she has to choose not to. I think having Hades be the Airsat's parent, the life donor, so to speak.
Are you sure you don't mean Ares?
No, in the DC animated universe, it was Hades.
No, I know, but
it's just
when you said violent and stuff, I just
it
doesn't really
being sculpted by the god of death is what he's not the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I meant there. She has a part of her that is forged from the underworld or death itself. That's what I was getting at with the Hades thing. Also, it means that her potential father is not a warmongering dickhead, because Hades is actually the mature sibling of the Olympian family. And by the way, I do not want Hades to ever be a villain for Wonder Woman, ever. Even if he is the life donor, so to speak. We need to stop portraying Hades as the Greek devil for no other reason than because we couldn't be arsed to think of another thing to do with him. Hades is the mature, responsible, respectable one of the Olympians, damn it.
To be fair, there are like two examples I think that could be the equivalent to the devil in Greek mythology. Typhon and Kronos.
Yeah. Even Kronos I would lean a little bit against, just because.
Well, I think more so in personality than anything.
Yeah, I would prefer Typhon, especially because in the DC universe, Typhon is actually the Lord of Chaos counterpart for Nabu. So that would, the fact that a Lord of Chaos is also happens to bear the name of the Greek equivalent of almost a Lovecraftian entity, that works.
Anyway.
But yeah, we need to stop slandering. We need to stop slandering Hades. Is the headline of this particular TED Talk. Stop slandering Hades. He's the mature one.
Also Anubis.
Yeah, he gets a little bit of it too. Like, no, Set. if you absolutely need there to be a Egyptian version of the devil, Tuttenstein got this right. It probably should be set.
Anyway. It's from cosmicbook.news. Superman star dodges the American way. Coinsworth response backlash is written by Matt McGloin, published June 30th, 2025.
Yeah, that screen cap is gonna continue to come back to bite them in the ass, I think. Oh god.
I'll be honest, I haven't heard anything about this.
I suppose we will cover it in due course.
All right. The movie hasn't even been out yet, and David Cornsmith is already confronting Superman criticism. That's not all. He intentionally refrains from saying the American way. Recall how merchandise for Gunn's new Man of Steel movie drops the American way for the human way. Okay, it's not so much I mind the changing of the American way or anything like that. I don't really care, to be honest. I think the human way is just not as
it
catchy.
it doesn't sound right. Frankly, considering that it was the Fleischer cartoons that made that phrasing up for the most part, I would just say drop the phrasing entirely.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
All right. We can guess Cornsworth was likely coached by Gunn and the movie's PR team to avoid stating the American way in interviews. Rumors offer Gunn has interjected his politics into the movie, something fans hope doesn't bring down the entire film. Regarding the criticism, Cornsworth addresses how Clark acted in the footage where he seems to be yelling at Lois, which fans have pointed out seems out of character. I think it depends. I think we're not. I just think we're not getting the full context in the footage. To be fair,
and that may be true, but whoever edited that trailer made him look like a thin-skinned brat. Because if he's acting that way with literally the most sympathetic journalist he possibly could be getting interviewed by, then I'm gonna have to start siding with Lex and say he might be a little bit too dangerous. Because as a public figure, you cannot act like that just in general. You cannot crash out like that. And two, a being as powerful as Superman especially should not act like that, because, to borrow the Stan Lee phrasing, with great power comes great responsibility. And the idea of a being as powerful as Superman being that easily triggered by journalists basically just doing their job, because again, Lois is about as sympathetic a journalist you can find to Superman, and we know that Lex is probably gonna be funding as many anti-Superman journalists as he can get away with.
anyway.
So, yeah.
All right. There are other scenes too which feature Cornsworth acting more like a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum than a mild-mannered Superman.
Fair point.
Again, I think that's more so the trailer than anything.
Yeah, it might be, but they still made the decision to edit it that way. So, unfortunately, if it does turn out to be taken out of context, I will rescind a lot of my criticism here. But I agree with a lot of people in the sense that it did make him look like a thin-skinned brat, not capable of managing journalists. Because again, Lois is about as sympathetic a journalist you'll be able to find, and we in like the two of us, we have seen what the journalist class can do when they're well and truly in writing hit piece mode. So if this is how Clark is reacting to probably the most objective, even most sympathetic journalist interview he could possibly have, then yeah, no, I'm sorry, I might be trending toward the Lex Luthor is right about Superman being dangerous thing at that point then. Because it's a lot closer to Homelander than it needs to be, is the thing.
Cornsworth says Superman has a third identity, only Lois and Ma can't really know. Cornsworth recently spoke with CBS Sunday Morning. That thing's still going on. Okay. And explained that they look at Superman as a third character, not Superman or Clark Kent, but a mix of both. Only that Ma and Pa Kent and Lois know that third character, the real version of him, which isn't entirely wrong. I mean, that's
Yeah, there's always been three versions of Clark. There's been Clark, the public performance to throw off the scent. There's been the true Clark, and then there's Kal-El / Superman. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, okay, to better name them, I think it's Kent, the reporter.
Or Smallville, maybe. Because,
Yeah.
Lois's pet name for him.
Yeah. That actually works better. Then there is Superman, which is for, him helping others,
Yeah,
and stuff.
the public persona of the hero, yeah.
And then there's Clark.
Yeah.
Which is what honestly, that's what he acts around with, like, other heroes, like people that are, his friends, his real, his closest friends,
the people he feels comfortable opening up to.
Yeah. Family, family, friends, people close to him, yeah.
Which, I know I'm a broken record on this point, but speaking of Lois calling him Smallville, we need her to have her customary Lois Lane sass. I'm sick of versions of Lois that are not as sassy as the one that we saw in Superman the Animated Series. She needs to be a hard-nosed snarker.
Honestly, and just pulling another thing from DCAU, I want to see the rivalry before they have, like, a romantic thing. Although I don't think we're getting that, but
yeah, it seems from what this article said, or what this article says that Cornsweat said, it seems like we're seeing a world where Lois already knows about the secret identity, or at least that happens very early on in the movie, because Cornsweat already said Lois and Ma and Pa Kent know the real Clark, so that implies that Lois knows already.
But no, I just like the DCAU when Clark is at the Daily Planet, like before they really start to show romantic feelings for each other. Him and Lois just have such a fun dynamic. Is that they're rivals? They're constantly trying to one up each other and writing articles and stuff, and they have just such a good back and forth. Like, he matches her sassiness, like.
And by the way, if you want to take your notes, Hollywood, on how to write an actually strong female character, Lois Lane from Superman the Animated Series. That is all. That is how you create a character who is sassy. You don't make her a bitch. You don't give her 1,000 chips on her shoulder. You don't have her unnecessarily acting tough when she doesn't need to. Have her giving as good as she gets in banter. That's how you write a strong female character.
Well, I mean, for Lois Lane, she does have like 1 or 2 chips on her shoulder. Like, depending on the version of Lois we're talking about.
She wants success in her, like, chosen book. Like, she wants a Pulitzer. That's one of the main chips on her shoulder. The other one being she wanted to prove herself outside of her father's legacy, because she doesn't like being overshadowed by her father's legacy.
Who is an army? Oh, can I? Who is an army? Who is an army general who was very absent from Lois's life growing up. So,
yeah, which this is the critical distinction. That is a in-universe chip on her shoulder that she has, not a this character hates the audience chip on her shoulder. It's not like Captain Marvel or She-Hulk, where she hates both people in and out of universe, and especially the chip in her shoulder. That it also isn't the majority of her character, which is also important. In the same way that when you see a male character being a bit of an asshole, they are a bit of an asshole and are more than willing to, rib and banter with people and so forth. But that's not the only aspect of their character. Also, and this is the tricky part, you can make a character snarky or asshole-ish without making them insufferable.
Um, so I don't know, and I think I brought this up before, and I don't know how long it's been a thing, although it does seem like it was kind of introduced in the 70s with the movie, like the actress who played Lois Lane originally in the Christopher Reeves Superman movie. And it has been referenced a few times in some comics. Uh, Lois Lane is slightly dyslexic. I think that's just a fun little thing because she is a fantastic reporter. Like, people have made mention of that, and she hasn't let that. I guess.
I have never heard that about Lois. So this is a
Well, again, Superman is
yeah.
not really Superman stuff is not really
Yeah,
her thing.
it's
So.
not my wheelhouse. So maybe it's me being weird, but I had never heard that Lois is dyslexic.
Yeah, she has it.
Did they even know what dyslexia was in the 70s? I don't think they did.
Well, she says, okay, she just asks how many T's are in bloodletting from the movie.
I
think that's just kind of.
I just interpreted that as her not knowing how to spell that because it's not a word that's used very often.
Well, I think they just kind of ran with it, but it's. Either way, I think it's just kind of interesting, honestly. Because again, somewhat irony, I guess. I like it is that again, well-renowned reporter.
With dyslexia.
Yeah. Plus, I'm looking at a panel right now where she and Clark are working like on computer, and she keeps asking him, you know, how many letters are in various words, and he just answers as they're both working together. It's kind of cute, honestly.
Okay, I believe you that that's a thing. It's just this is news to me entirely. I didn't realize.
Like I said, I think to be fair, I don't think it's really touched upon much.
Mm-hmm.
But
anyway,
again, it's just like one of those interesting things that that adds, I think, a bit more character to the character.
Mm-hmm. I don't really have a strong opinion on it one way or the other, but we should move on.
I'm not gonna say I relate to it because I don't really have that issue. I think it's more so me trying to either. I don't know. Honestly, I can't speak words sometimes. I don't know if that counts.
Is there a verbal equivalent to dyslexia? I don't know. Anyway, but moving forward because we still have like other stuff to do tonight.
Yeah. Where was I? All right, we haven't figured out what to call him yet, whether it's Cal or Clark. Probably Clark. But rather than thinking about one, either Superman or Clark Kent, as the real one, and the other as the alter ego, which you can go back and forth on. For Batman, sure.
Yeah, for Clark, it's definitely not it's not even debatable. There are three Clarks. There is Superman / Kal-El. There is the performance of Clark he does to throw off the scent, which I agree we should call that version Smallville. Although ironically, I think the best showcase of the Clark behind the Smallville persona was the one from Smallville, which is somewhat confusing. But yeah, then there's the true Clark before he decided to put on the bumbling persona.
There's a third truer version of him, which is the version of him when he's with somebody who knows that he's both, said Cornswit.
I think that's fair. That's accurate and fair.
Cornswith continued. So in our version, that's Mal Kent, who knows that he's Superman and knows that he's Clark and grew up with him. You know, he grew up with him, and Lois Lane, who knows that he's both of these characters, and he interacts with him as a journalist, as Superman, and she interacts with him as a colleague, as Clark Kent. And so she sees these characters, and she's one of the only people who gets to see him when he's not playing either character, and he's a little bit of both.
Okay, so that to be entirely clear, then that does confirm that Lois knows in the DCU.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would have started there. I think there would have at least been some. There's at least some utility to her finding out, but then again, as somebody who isn't particularly fond of the secret identity thing, I think it might just be more convenient for her to know already, so we can dispense with the will they won't they shtick. Because I don't know about anybody else, but my least favorite part of any romance storyline ever is the will they won't they bullshit.
I will agree to that. With superheroes, I think it's a little more.
It's a little bit more defensible because there is some utility to the hero opening up to the people he or she trusts about the secret identity.
Right.
I just prefer to skip the will they won't they part. Is the thing.
No, that's fair. I will agree. Yeah, the will they won't they is just fucking stupid at this point. I think. The drama comes from, can you trust this? Like the question of whether or not, like if you are in it, I do think obviously like I can't think of a good example, mind you, because it's always the will they won't they instead of like them being together. Though Invincible kind of did this, but not in a good way. Mind you,
let's be honest, Amber doesn't deserve Mark, and never did.
I think the issue is that they just kind of made the character seem unlikable when.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, like before that, she seemed pretty cool and good and stuff, but with it being revealed that she figured it out, and was still being kind of
insufferable bitch about the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although to be fair, even in the comics, Mark ends up with Eve.
No, I know, but at least in there, they kind of Mark and Amber end things amicably.
Yeah, I think if it were up to me when it came to adapting Invincible for the show, I would have just left Amber out entirely and had Mark and Eve's relationship building from the get-go. But then again, I understand that guy who wrote Invincible, whose name escapes me. I understand Kirkman's deference to trying to keep as much of the story the same as you possibly can. I just think that for straightforwardness' sake, it would have been nice to build Mark and Eve from the get-go and not worried about Amber so much.
Well, I've also seen someone pitch the idea that she could have been the child of Darkwing. And she, again, I'm not going to be able to explain because I saw that video. It's on YouTube by a YouTuber called Unique Nameosaurus.
It's lame, but it's adorably lame. That's the joke, I know.
Yeah. Did a full video of that, like rewrite that character and like her whole deal. Yeah, her dad. Like, I'm just giving the basis here because it's been a while since I've watched the video, so I'm not gonna be able to like give you a full rundown of it. Yeah, you guys can search for it if you want. But her dad was the original Darkwing. You know, he was killed in the first episode.
That would have been a much more interesting character for her, I think.
And she kind of lost interest in the whole hero thing, and
because she lost her dad.
Yeah, and she kind of starts to grow a little bit more cynical, a little bitter, and she doesn't want to be involved with Mori because of his superheroics, just because she's afraid of
she doesn't want to lose him,
just like her dad. Yeah.
That would make for a not only would that make for a much more like just likable character, but it actually uses her bitterness and her chip on her shoulder to make you feel more sympathy for the character instead of which is again a big problem with a lot of especially like female or diverse characters in today's day and age. Thank you, Social Justice, for fucking everything over for everyone. In that they always are bitter just for the sake of being bitter, and it never actually becomes something you can have empathy for because they don't know how to write character who is bitter for reasons other than socio-political activism / cause bullshit. Of course, Amber wasn't one of those. She was just a bitch, but the same rationale applies. You need to make your characters actually likable, or your audience, by definition, will not like them.
Anyway, shall we?
Yeah, moving on.
Truth and justice and all those good things. Cornsworth a key scene with Lois reflects this balance between identities, showing Superman in a more vulnerable human way. And so that scene, I think, is the crux of that character that we see. And the reality is that when he doesn't have to be Superman, and he doesn't have to be this calm, reassuring presence to the public, when he doesn't have to symbolize safety and security and truth and justice and all those good things, he still feels those values. Explained Cornsweat. But
I don't.
Hold on. Sorry. Okay, let me read the last thing here just so you have the full context of the... But just like when a firefighter comes home or a paramedic comes home, they might get frustrated or they might panic about something, where in the course of doing their job, they would never let themselves panic or yell or raise their voice or convey that kind of instability or uncertainty, he said.
I do not know. It might just be Cornsweat sucking at phrasing, but that doesn't sound right. It sounds like Clark faking it, and that's not. It's very important that's not who Superman is. He doesn't get bothered not because he feels compelled to be a more level-headed presence. He doesn't get bothered because he simply just doesn't get bothered. That's a key feature of who he is as a person. That's why, for example, the Kents didn't die in some kind of toddler tantrum when Clark was going through the Kryptonian equivalent of Terrible Twos, because he simply didn't have a Terrible Twos face. It's not quite as insufferable as Zack Snyder completely changing Superman's moral compass entirely, but it smacks of, once again, writers not being comfortable with the idea that a character can be good just because they're just that good, damn it. Like that, I hate this. We have to turn everything into, there has to be a reason for a character that good to exist. Stop. It honestly, this is an annoyance that I have. It really feels like the majority of modern day writers, whether they realize it or not, relate more to Lex Luthor's way of thinking than they do Clark's. Because that is the thing that bothers Luthor. The thing that bothers Luthor is Luthor cannot countenance the idea that someone can just be that good by default. That he has to find a utilitarian reason for Superman to be that good. And the thing that pisses Luthor off is because he keeps looking for a reason that doesn't exist. The reason Clark is that good is just because he is that good. And we should all be very grateful for that because of the aforementioned, given in most versions of Superman. I know there are some where he develops his powers when he's a teenager, But in most versions of Superman, he's had his powers since he came out of the fucking Kryptonian pod there. Like, and it's good that he had his powers from that early age because it demonstrates the key feature of Superman, namely that he is just that good. Clark could always potentially break the Earth in two, but he was such a good kid that it was never a danger. Duh.
Moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
Okay. Coins were added with Lois alone, even though they are technically recording. That's the part of the scene that he keeps kind of forgetting that he's on the record. At this point, it becomes just between him and Lois. You're able to see not his anger at Lois, but his frustration with the perspective that she's representing, and his passion about how certain he is that he's doing the right thing.
Okay, so this literally was justifying that awful scene. It's not a red flag, but it is at least an orange one. Ugh. I've already explained in detail why this bugs me. I don't need to go over it again. It's just stop trying to give Superman reasons to just be that good and just let him be that good, damn it. Same thing with Steve Rogers, Captain America. He doesn't need a reason to be that good. He just is. That's what made him worthy of the serum in the first place. Moving on.
Yeah, give me a sec. Things loading. Hello?
It's sad when I have to be the one who is repping the idea that a character can just be that good. Being, as I've already specified, that I am very much not that character. Like, I actually do have more utilitarian leanings to my rationales for the most part.
Hello?
Still here.
Okay, sorry, things were frozen on my end for a second there, so I'm not...
You're good. I think it was just your internet being an asshole again.
When isn't it? Alright,
Point.
Okay, yeah, give it a second. The thing's still loading, so... Okay. Let me present screen share. Okay, so kind of staying on DC stuff. This is a fan thing. Oh, to be fair. Okay, so I found all the trailers. Oh, shit. I forgot to... Okay. Go. So, yeah, this is a fan trailer I had seen about a week ago for a project made by Max Landis, who is a Hollywood writer who has done a lot of stuff. He's worked on movies. He wrote the script for movies like Bright, Chronicle. I believe he created or had worked on the show Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency.
Oh, he did that. I didn't realize he did that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
He's done a few other things, just not things I can remember off the top of my head. He also so this is Superman: The Starlight Emperor trailer. This is part of Max Landis' whole kind of media project called the Kryptonian Epic, which is based around a comic series that he wrote for DC some years ago called Superman American Alien, where he really delved into kind of the origin and aspects and kind of character of Clark Kent and Superman, and did it. From what I understand, I still need to get it and read it. But from what I understand, a lot of people have liked it and think it's really good. And he never really got to sort of finish it. He had all these ideas and stuff in his head about how he would have gone about it and like kind of create his whole kind of like series, and somewhat like it is very much his own Elseworlds. I will say that. And he kind of started doing this back during the quarantine. So 2019, 2020, 2021, he started picking this up because he had the time to, and it just kind of grown and developed and stuff. And this is kind of like the culmination, Superman the Starlight Emperor, which is kind of like the finale of everything.
I will be trying to restrain myself and resisting the urge to comment on a lot of stuff, because Brainstormer has told me several things prior to the stream that Max Landis did in his setting that are just indefensible. So I will attempt to restrain myself from ranting as much as I want to just burn this or freeze this to the ground.
Right. I do want to preface this. I will acknowledge that Max Landis is he's not on the level of Zack Snyder in terms of like being edgy. Because with Zack Snyder, that's kind of needlessly edgy stuff. Max Landis kind of has a point with the edge he does, but it's still edgy. It's still pushing a bit over that line.
I will say for my part, no reason behind the edge could possibly justify the shit that Brainstormer has mentioned to me that he has done. But I will restrain myself and be polite so that Brainstormer can hopefully talk about more nuanced commentary than the rants that I will otherwise deflower on this thing.
Right. There are a bunch of videos about it. Originally, this was actually all supposed to be like kind of an animated movie that they were working on, but because of just constrictions and time, really, and like the people involved were like just busy and stuff, and he just decided to do kind of his own kind of thing, which kind of like it's effectively just a acted out audiobook, more or less. Like he's reading most of it, he's doing a lot of acting with like some people and stuff. It's low budget, but you can tell there's heart and passion in it. He is genuinely a fan of Superman, which I respect.
He doesn't appear to be a fan of much else, but okay. I digress.
A part of me regrets telling you, but I feel like if I didn't tell you, you would be very angry at me if I didn't tell you.
Yes, you can't tell me there's a thing that needs to be ranted at and then not give me the necessary parameters to rant with.
No, you're fair.
But like I said, I will restrain my rants so that you can talk about more nuanced shit.
I do want to point this out again. It's a universe where Superman is very much the focal point, which Prime DC universe doesn't really do often. It's mostly Batman.
Yeah, that probably contributes to the aforementioned people don't like or respect the character nearly enough.
Yeah. And I forgot. The Starlight Emperor was a 3-hour kind of video released on YouTube last night on July 4th. For those who aren't aware, so if you guys want to check it out, go to his YouTube page, which is Up to My Knees.
Strange didn't just try to like mark it on his name, considering he's a fairly famous writer.
To be fair, he's had this channel for years, like early YouTube days too. So
Okay, so still, I think he probably gained a lot of traction just by, revealing that it is Max Landis, the famous writer behind all sorts of shit.
well, he also did the YouTube videos, The Slap. If anyone remembers those.
Only vaguely, and most of what I remember is random tangential like controversies they had. Anyway, moving on.
No, just random people slapping each other. That's the whole video.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway. Apple pie, because Superman related.
Well, I'm trying to think if I have anything else to say. Again, I do feel like I have to also say this. It probably would be best if everyone watched like there are playlists on YouTube. I believe in order of all the videos released. Before you watch Starlight Emperor, just because you need the necessary context. And a lot of them are long form, either hour and a half, longer, depending, just so you have the context of all the characters, all the events, everything referenced in Starlight Emperor, which again is a little over 3 hours long. So if you're willing to put in the effort and time to sit down and watch all that stuff, I would recommend in like segments.
I will not be doing that because I know enough to already be angry, and I don't need any more reasons to be angry and to want to go full winter on things. Anyway, apple pie.
Well, I wasn't exactly talking to you, Dalton, but fine.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody gives a fuck about Superman. You don't give a fuck about Superman, even if you think you do. Bruce Wayne is a fucking group called the Super Friends. You are like. But here's the thing.
Okay, before you say anything, Dalton. That was part of a video he did years ago where he was explaining the appeal of Superman.
I mean, to be fair, he's not wrong. Yeah. We frequently end up covering this exact issue, and I've talked about that in the previous segment. So, yeah.
And to be fair, this is him also kind of taking shots at himself because he is self-aware enough to do that. He's not so far up his own ass about that kind of deal.
I mean, to be fair, I'm not sure what part he thinks he made a mistake there with. He's right. People don't like and respect Superman nearly as much as they should.
No, I'm referring to the titles here. Like, before James Gunn fixes the DC universe, Max Landis will ruin Superman.
Bold of you to assume James Gunn is going to actually be able to make something of that, but we can hope he fixes it. But the writing on the wall doesn't seem to bode well.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's just, again, the guy. I'm not gonna lie, he is kind of weird, but he's enthusiastic when it comes to working on stuff. So I respect it. You don't have to. I'm just saying, I'm just speaking my piece here.
I can't respect it given some of the choices he's made. There's a part of me that wants to eat his face, but I will restrain that portion of me.
Go cry in a mug.
My version of crying in a mug in this particular case would probably be setting up a saw trap for him, but never mind.
I'm not going to tell you to let it go because I know you're not going to, because you're just that much of a petty bitch. But
I have not developed the capacity to let things go, and I expect not to in the near future.
Yeah, it's a lot healthier to do so, right?
Fuck being healthy. Nothing about my life has been healthy up until this point. Why should I start now?
Karma? You know what? I just realized what I said, and I don't think. You know what? I realized how stupid it was. Never mind.
I don't particularly believe in karma, and even a lot of Buddhists and a lot of Hindus think that karma is something that you like implicitly buy into, and that it's a trap. So I'm going to continue not believing in karma, so as to not be subject to it,
If karma did exist, the world would be a lot better. So,
or a lot worse, depending on which side of the coin the majority of the world fell on.
well, okay. If I'm speaking karma of individuals and how many terrible fucking people there are currently running the world to shit, then I would think karma is good enough. Would pay that in
Yes.
kind, and therefore would be all that negativity towards those individuals would equal a positive for the greater world.
Yeah. Anyway, apple pie.
Superman,
The ultimate superhero.
that's the symbol on the pod. Batman's true identity. That was crazy. Wayne Manor's burning. They assemble a team. It's a house of cards.
He says I'm the perfect hybrid.
I will say his version of the Joker is super interesting.
Do I want to know what he's done to him?
Well, I'm saying it as a positive. So the Joker, well, for one thing, is described as a terrorist, right?
That makes sense. He very much is one based on the actions he's taken.
Okay. With the rise of superheroes, which is a whole cultural phenomenon that does happen, right?
That also makes sense. Well done.
The Joker, whose real name is Aaron Scott in this, right? Stay with me.
Okay.
Is a college student who dresses up as the Joker, as a clown, and commits acts of dangerous acts of terrorism, violence, mayhem, all this shit. As a means
Okay.
of
Okay, finish.
as a means of I'm using air quotes, commentary art on the phenomena of superheroes as a means of critiquing and criticizing the dangers of them.
Okay,
he
I'm
is-
of two minds on that. On the one hand, as someone who viscerally hates Antifa,
Mhm.
there is something amusing about framing the Joker as an Antifa member, and the Joker is supposed to be a villain, so it doesn't run into the flag smasher problem from Falcon and the Winter Soldier of trying to make them anti-heroes. On the other hand, as a fan of the character of the Joker, to borrow a line from Heath Ledger, he's a dog chasing cars. He wouldn't know what to do with one when he caught.
Well, to
Now,
be
mind
fair-
you, that version of the Joker was definitely lying about being that, because the Joker in that movie definitely is a philosophical person and definitely does scheme. But the Joker fundamentally is an agent of what Camus referred to as absurdism, or what can more broadly be termed chaos and nihilism.
Again, I am. It's been a while since I've watched the video that did the introductory description of the Joker. So I'm like a few years. So keep that in mind.
Mhm.
So what I say could be not. I'm paraphrasing. Obviously, it's just like. But yeah, he also thing you might like. Max made him and Harley collaborators in this quote unquote project of
I do prefer when Joker and Harley are more like Bonnie and Clyde than an abusive relationship. That being said, like I said, I'm of two minds. On the one hand, as someone who hates Antifa, there's the remarkable degree of Schadenfreude of the Joker and Harley basically being Antifa members.
I don't think
On the-
I'm not sure that's
On the-
entirely.
On the other hand, the Joker's philosophy, insofar as he has one, should be more existential than that, and less political in the college activism sense.
Again, I might not have explained it well, but again, it's probably I didn't explain it well, but my point being is it's all an act that is put on that it's I don't know, it's complicated. Which I really realize is weird to say for the Joker, because he's like one of the most simplistic of Batman's villains, really.
Yeah. He thinks morality is essentially a joke. So he made his, entire raison d'etre laughing at the joke that he thinks morality is.
Although they did get a good actor to play him. Mainly, you'll see the scenes in Starlight Emperor towards the end of the video, but he just has such a charisma and electric performance.
That's definitely necessary if you're getting to play any version of the Joker, correct?
Yeah.
I do like the fact that the Joker has basically become the ultimate method acting role. Ever since Heath Ledger, he's become like the excuse for an actor to go full method. I really wish that had started before Batman 89, because as much as I enjoy Batman 89, Jack Nicholson is the weakest part of it because he is just playing Jack Nicholson. Like he doesn't disappear into the role the way Hamill did, or the way Ledger did, or the way Phoenix did, and that's a shame.
All right, shall we?
Apple pie.
Apple pie.
Surprise, bitch! It's the grill! It's about changing the world. None of us are ordinary. I actually got really emotional doing that part.
Okay, wait. Hold
Superman time.
That big red.
hold on a second here.
No, he doesn't have.
I thought-
No, it's not. It's not magic.
What the? Okay. Now you need to explain, because I'm gonna have an aneurysm if you don't. What did they do? What did they do to Captain Marvel? And yes, I still call him Captain Marvel, because making him take the name of the wizard who gave him his powers is stupid.
I mean, Captain Shazam could have worked, I think, but whatever.
Also, it doesn't make sense practically, because therefore, in order to introduce himself to anyone, he would have to say the thing that turns him back.
I think to be fair, I also think it has to be intention with the word.
I don't know. I think that's a little bit of a facile distinction. I'd rather he just call himself something that didn't make him trigger his own off switch every time he said it.
Okay, so I guess I gotta give the background first
Go on.
before I explain Billy Batson. Okay, so in this universe, Kryptonians are legitimately plant people.
I don't hate that, honestly, because the photosynthesis and thing and Superman's powers.
But they look like legitimate aliens. They don't look human at all. To explain Clark, they developed something called hybridization, or like a seed or spore, which is how they reproduce, right? As they are plants.
Okay.
Mixes with whatever planet that the seed ends up at, goes through a hybridization process where they take on the aspects and physical appearance of the host of that planet, right?
Okay. The dominant species, essentially.
I didn't have the words in my head there, so thank you for helping with that. Lex Luthor kind of found out about this because he stole the Kryptonian ship from Clark, like the pod he was in.
I see. So Lex
And-
continues to be a dick. That makes sense.
When isn't he?
As the question would say, no matter what reality he calls home, Luthor is Luthor.
And thus try to replicate Superman's powers or a Superman through the idea of hybridization. Try to create other heroes and stuff to basically make Superman obsolete or whatever, right?
Right.
Varying successes. You get a couple people like that. Enlist the help of a scientist known as Dr. Kirk Langstrom.
Okay.
Billy Batson, along with another person, another being called Wally West, like their names, are hybrids.
Okay. What about
basically? Their powers, I believe, are connected with like an electromagnetic field that is manipulated by Kryptonians, hence their powers. Like Clark has that. It's complicated, it's weird, and I will agree, it's kind of out. It doesn't really make sense and kind of limited.
The question is, how does any of this tie into the phrasing based power?
I think it's just something he says. I don't think it was ever explained. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, that is a justifiable rant. I'm not even restraining myself on that point.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to change mechanics and things and move things around, that's fine, but you actually have to play the card you're choosing to change things to. If you want Billy to still have the Shazam activation phrase, and you don't want him to be magic for some fucking reason, you need to think of some other way to justify the phrasing. You need to justify the like you can change mechanics if you absolutely want to, but you then have to actually play by the rules that you yourself made. Like, if you want to change the rules, you can change the rules, but you then actually have to play by those rules. You can't just pull whatever's convenient out of your ass, especially not if you're trying to ground, which seems to be the move that he's going for. If you're trying to ground the powers to some extent, that's fine, but if you want things to stay relatively the same to every other version of the universe, you have to actually put in the effort to explain shit. Like the Superman hybridization thing, I don't necessarily mind, because that's at least playing by the hand that you decided to play with. But if you want Billy to still need to say Shazam in order to access his powers, I'm gonna need you to stop being an asshole and actually provide a reason. You can change that his powers are magic based or not magic based. I would not do that, because that's anathema to everything I think, say, and believe. But if you, as a person who for some reason hates magic users, have decided that needs to be a thing, then you need to actually decide what parts of the character you want to keep, and based on the powers or based on the things about the characters that you want to keep, actually play by the rules that you yourself are laying down. If you can't do that, then you are a cunt and you have lost any pretense of validity. Moving on. Apple pie.
I haven't lost yet. Send everyone. You can't stop this thing. Superman will save the world.
And Jesus, you're going on too long.
And the Justice League is coming too.
Half of them have magical powers, so I don't know how you're gonna fucking do that, but okay.
I've seen it. It works. I'm not gonna ask you to let it go. I'm not gonna say anything, honestly. I get it. I get it.
The fact that he doesn't play by his own world building pisses me off even more than the fucktarded no magic rule.
I mean, he has magic. He just doesn't explain it.
Which is basically the same as not having it. Because controversial opinion, if you want to introduce a magic system, you actually do have to make some pretense in explaining how your magic system works. Now, mind you, my advice there would be make sure that your magic system at least resembles what people think of when they think of magic, so that it's actually the concept you're playing with, which will inevitably probably best practices most of the time lead to you actually adapting some version of real world magic, because magic has been a thing in human society for thousands of years and every culture has their own version of it, so I don't see why you would try to reinvent the wheel unnecessarily. But if you introduce a magic system, you do actually have to explain it, because magic is not a, or should not be, a synonym for Deus Ex Machina. And even if it is, that's what's known in writing circles as a soft magic system, which is a bad premise for a consistently magic using character, because soft magic systems work best when magic is supposed to be a almost divine or mythical thing. Like Tolkien has a soft magic system. There is actually mechanics behind his magic system if you read the Silmarillion, namely the concept of a Fea or life force and the concept of words of command, because in Tolkien's Legendarium, the entire universe was sung into existence. So speaking in the same primordial language in which the universe was sung into existence allows you to essentially control things that are existent in the Tolkien universe. But even then, a soft magic system works best when you have a deity or some kind of spiritual aspect to your magic. A soft magic system does not work for a magic user character, because the magic user character
Hey, Don.
needs to know what the fuck they're doing and be able to consistently rely on whatever power set they have by way of it.
To be fair, when I said he doesn't explain, I think he doesn't explain the origin of magic or the deeper aspects of it. With Z, as he often calls her, Zatanna, who is a sort of main character in the Kryptonian epic, he does make mention that she basically manipulates matter and reality through a concentrated focus of intent and I believe mental is it fortitude or mental will?
Oh. Okay, a soft magic system is better than no magic system, but I hate the fucking intent thing. Although in fairness, I hate the fucking intent thing, because hipster, new agey Wiccan posers actually use the intent rationale a lot, and that's
Okay,
part of the
not
reason why I hate it.
again?
That's actually fair. He's at least falling in the same category of quasi explanation that I know is a thing enough to hate. So that's fair. As much as I hate the intent thing, actual magic users, misguidedly in my opinion, use that rationale themselves. So I can't even necessarily fault him for that.
Moving on?
Yeah, moving on.
Okay. Okay, so something kind of positive, I guess. Unless Dawn wants to be a angry old man again.
I will judge it by its own merits, come hell or high water, and nobody gets to judge me for that.
Yes, we can. If you can be judgmental, we can be judgmental.
Fair enough. Moving on.
I was gonna say, unless you want to be a hypocrite.
No, that's fair. My point is that it is my nature, and you can't really judge
Don't
that
nobody.
any more than you can judge a dog for being what a dog is or a cat for being what a cat is. In that sense, you can't add a moral component to it necessarily,
I'm not.
unless
I'm
my
not adding-
nature leads me to do immoral things, which it hasn't yet.
Dalton,
But who knows?
I wasn't. There's no moral component to me judging you. I'm more judging you on the fact that it's just by your nature, you are going to go on a very long, extended rant that honestly really often repeats information constantly if I don't stop you and tell you we got to move on.
Point. It's just that I have excesses of passion is the problem.
No, okay, no, I get that.
I actually get to the point too quickly, and then
Mhm.
I run into the problem of I have more anger built up than I was able to express in the words that I said.
Right.
Moving on.
You think you should see someone about that?
No.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you want to have longer speeches that help you burn off that anger without
I don't
like,
trust. I don't trust anyone else to help me in that vein. I don't trust psychologists, especially not in today's day and age, and I don't particularly trust linguists or other like literature experts because so much of modern day literature expertise is the very same Frankfurt School crap that we decry regularly. So yeah, the problem is I just don't trust anyone else to teach me how to do those things because
you trust
I know what academia is in today's day and age, and I know what the psychological profession in today's day and age is, and I don't trust
Oh.
either of them.
Do you trust anyone ever?
I mean,
The fact that there was
it depends on what your definition of trust is. Like I would like to say I trust my friends, but it very much depends on what your definition of trust happens to be.
For the record, just the fact that there was hesitation for like a good 5 seconds before you answered is very telling.
Well, because I wanted to be honest with you, and I can't be, and I had to actually think about it before I said anything because I wanted to be honest with you.
Okay, Don, if you legitimately can't just say yes that you trust your friends, then there is a level of distrust you have with them.
Well,
that's not
okay.
and that's not me being critical or judgmental. It's okay. Honestly,
again, it very much depends on your definition of trust. Like by my definition of trust, yes, I trust my friends, but I realize a lot of people's definition of trust is going to have an emotional component, and I don't really do emotional components if I can feasibly avoid it.
Okay, you know what? Now I'm going to say this. You are quite emotional. I think you don't realize that. And I'm not going to say that you are bound by your emotions or controlled by them, because you are not. You are quite rational and more so guided by critical thinking.
Well, but that's what I mean. Emotions are not a reason. Emotions are essentially the neurological equivalent of a biological function. That what I mean when I say I don't trust emotions or I don't put much emphasis on emotions is because I consider emotions to be secondary to whatever happens to be causing them.
Hey,
and
Don,
it's important to address the actual thing that's causing the emotions and to shun any other aspect in which the emotions can bias you where possible.
Could it also be that you just had a really fucked up childhood and thus you've kind of compartmentalized
Compensated?
a lot of it?
I mean, it depends on how much you trust the psychological profession, and in today's day and age, I do not trust the psychological profession to be anything other than gaslighting with
do you deny that you've had a fucked up
legitimacy
childhood?
of a degree.
Do you deny you've had a fucked up childhood?
Oh, no, I just don't know to what degree it's causal.
I would say at least a good third, or like, okay, about 25% for you.
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, to be
Anyway.
fair, I'm lowballing.
Anyway, we should move on because we have stuff to do.
Yeah, true. To be fair, it's a little over 30 seconds. So, okay. So yeah, this is okay. I want to preface this. This is not an official thing. This is a fan-made thing, even though it looks professional. And we wish it was because. Okay, so
well, we've run into the problem many times now where fan films look better than actually released shit.
Yeah. But what I was okay, so this is a teaser trailer for a fan-made animated Batman Beyond film, which is kind of inspired from the canceled animated Batman Beyond film that would have been made by the guys who did Spider-Verse.
Which this goes back to Warner Brothers having absolutely no idea what they're doing with the DC universe at any given moment, because someone pitched them. What if we did the same thing Spider-Verse did with the same people who did Spider-Verse?
There was concept art,
and they said no to that, but they said yes to James Gunn making Nathan Fillion play Guy Gardner instead of Hal Jordan, and they said yes to skipping ahead to Damian Wayne.
All right. Now, yeah, I do want to also say this. It's not connected to those guys in any way. It's just its own fan-made project. I just randomly came across this like on Friday. Not Friday, Thursday. And I thought, it looks cool.
Presumably it's made by people who, like everyone else with a brain, heard that idea and thought it sounded awesome and wondered why in the fuck Warner Brothers said no.
Yeah. So there's 3 things we're going to watch. The first 2 are teaser trailers, and then a Kickstarter video, which now that I realized I forgot to add the link in the description if you guys want to support it. But there's a link to the video of the Kickstarter video in the description, which the description of that video will have the Kickstarter in it. So if you guys are interested, go there and you can go support them. If we have time, we actually might just check the Kickstarter page.
Yep.
But yeah, it's the first teaser trailer for Batman Beyond animated short film. So,
Batnana. Yeah.
I don't know why I was gonna say something else, but I like my brain just short circuited and forgot Batnana for a second there.
Yeah, but Batnana Beyond.
It's a bit mouthful, isn't it?
Yes, but it's I'm doing it for the meme, damn it.
Okay.
Batnana Beyond.
I like the silver for the armor design, actually.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Don?
I don't really have an opinion one way or the other on the silver, but it does look very professionally animated and stuff, which once again leads us to the why in all the fucks is this not a real thing?
Mm. I'm kind of getting, I don't know if you've seen it, probably not. Netflix's Cyberpunk Edgerunners anime, which was made by Studio Trigger. I mean, not as flashy or anything, obviously, but kind of design, a little bit of the design wise, you know?
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Batnana Beyond?
Batnana Beyond.
Why isn't this real? Like, there's so many decisions Hollywood makes where I'm like, why is this real? But with this, I'm like, why isn't this real? This is yet again an indictment of modern day Hollywood, because they turn down ideas like this but they say yes to other ideas that make like 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 obviously this isn't related because this is a Marvel comparison, not a DC one, but they apparently canceled or delayed Armor Wars, but they said yes to Ironheart as an example. And in Warner Brothers' case, they said no to Coyote versus Acme, and they said no to this, but they said yes to any number of other questionable decisions they've done
I
from the time of 2013 to now with the DC universe.
I completely forgot about Armor Wars.
Yep. But no, they either canceled or delayed Armor Wars to give Riri a shot first because they decided that needed to be a thing.
In the idea I've had to redo the MCU post Infinity War, to dedicate the 5 years to actually being developed and stuff, for not having Endgame come a year after Infinity War, instead pushing that back.
Actually play with the world building as it was built. Yeah.
Yeah. Armor Wars actually would have made sense, and have Rhodey be the central character if Tony is missing at the time.
Yeah. And on the topic of Ironheart, it will never cease to amaze me that they actually have a female who would be a female character who would be ready, willing, and able to take over Iron Man's legacy in the form of Morgan Stark, but they still went with Riri. And also, people forget this, but James Rhodes actually has either a daughter or a niece, I don't remember, who does at one point put on an Iron Man-like suit as well. So even if you wanted to play the black, representation card, there's still a better answer than Riri.
If we're also talking specifically Iron Man legacy deal,
Mm-hmm.
I know Rhodey is his own character and has built himself up as the War Machine, but in comics wise, when Tony was more or less indisposed, when he Demon in the Bottle and all that shit.
Yeah, Rhodey did it for a while.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, Rhodey kind of got shafted in terms of character development, so that would actually be nice for him.
Hence the idea, hence the pitch I would want to have done for Armor Wars, focus on Rhodey and trying to carry on Tony while he's gone, as the world is kind of crazy and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the specifics of the storyline of Armor Wars. I think it's given the name, I assume people are building a bunch of Iron Man wannabe suits and trying to, or using specs or blueprints.
Which I mean, to be fair, it's kind of surprising that it's taken this long. Presumably, it's taken this long because Tony Stark has, billionaire quality lawyers and probably puts the kibosh on anyone who tries to, or more probably just hires anyone who tries to do Iron Man technology for Stark Industries.
To be fair, it was kind of set up in Iron Man 2 back in, 2010 or 9? No, 10.
Yeah, it would have been 10 because 2008 was Iron Man and Dark Knight.
And 2009 was Incredible Hulk. So yeah, 10. Okay. In the court hearing about in the earliest part of the movie, where
about Justin Hammer
and the Chinese and other places trying to build unsuccessfully, but given the time frame and everything that's happened in the MCU and just everything there, and hell, the salvaging that Vulture did for since in the 2012 2016, that was 11 13 14 12.
If we assume that Homecoming took place in the same year it came out, it would be 4 years.
Huh. Thought they made it sound.
Also, they retconned it so that the kid that Tony saves, I think, was
Peter,
it Iron
yeah.
Man or Iron Man 2, is Peter. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Really, just 4 years the Vulture was active? I could have sworn it was 8.
No, if we assume that Homecoming happened in the same year it came out in.
No, I know. I'm
And-
just saying, like, I could have sworn in the movie they said it was longer.
That may very well be the case. It's been a while since I watched.
Anyway, Vulture scavenging stuff and like selling it to people. So again, like,
And presumably other people also doing that, because the alien technology salvage from the New York incident probably was considerable.
I mean, there was a one shot that had Sitwell going after a couple that stole a Chitauri blaster to rob places. So
I mean, we saw in, I know people don't like remembering She-Hulk because She-Hulk was shit, but we saw that the Wrecking Crew does in fact exist in the MCU because
they were so
Asgardian
done.
Crowbar.
They were done so dirty in that.
Everyone who was even tangentially related to that show was done dirty in that show. That show was like 98% dirt and 1% spite.
You can also bring back Justin Hammer too. Actually,
They could. They made reference to Obadiah Stane in the second episode of Ironheart.
huh? Has been dead for over.
Because the randomly flamboyant dude that Riri goes heist questing with was apparently related to or no, it wasn't the flamboyant dude, it was the suburban neighbor dude was the son of Obadiah Stane apparently.
You know, that guy becomes Technovore. It's a big time Iron Man villain. Dangerous, psychotic.
I haven't gotten that far in Ironheart yet, if it's already come out.
No, I mean, like, just in the comics, there's a character called Technovore who's.
Oh, okay, so they don't actually mention it in the show.
Or I might be thinking of an anime. No, actually, no, that's an animated movie. But there is a Ezekiel Stane who's like Obadiah Stane's son, who's after Tony for revenge and all that. You know.
I don't remember if they even gave him a name in the Ironheart show as yet. But they did specify that the random dude that Riri has a conversation with is the son of Obadiah Stane, and he has biometric thumb printed garage where he keeps a bunch of tech salvage shit. And of course, they had Riri one-upping him in terms of tech knowledge, even though it was his shit and his storage unit they were in. But
okay, anyway, back to something positive. The second teaser trailer for Batman Beyond: Broken Will, which is what they have called it.
I feel like that's also a reference to like the fan base's will after first the Henry Cavill drama and then the Batman Beyond getting canned.
Right.
Because again, stupid decisions. Warner Brothers, stupid decisions.
You see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Batman Beyond.
Hold on, let me check the quality on this. Okay, it's at auto. I'm gonna click it. There we go. This kind of reminds me of like 90s anime, like this little landscape here.
Little bit. Yeah, it does have like Akira vibes.
Okay, I do want to make mention of this. 90s anime, like specifically like the sci-fi genre of 90s anime, had so much effort put into it.
Yep. Like most good things.
No, you know, like how like it's so like just how much like design and stuff was put into it. Like it just felt like you were just legitimately just watching or like in that street in the scene, you know?
Yep.
Christ,
there's a reason why the Wachowski siblings were fans of anime and why that shows so heavily in the style of the Matrix trilogy. And yes, I still refer to it as a trilogy because it's better for everyone if we just forget that the fourth one exists.
Mm-hmm. Anyway,
Batman Beyond.
Batman Beyond.
Terry. Bruce survived this long because he was prepared. Even though time has got the best of him.
Oh, Bruce is dead.
I mean, that annoys me a little bit because I did like the
Well, this
I
is
did like the relationship between old Bruce and Terry, but I can live with it.
Well, to be fair,
They're putting it to good use for his character and stuff, so it's fine.
Again, all looks amazing. I kind of like the look. So they have the Nike shoes, which look very similar to the ones in Back to the Future Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the ones that lace themselves up.
Yeah.
Was cool.
Yeah,
and
they actually built that as a prop. I will never cease to amaze me that they actually built a pair of those.
Honestly, I legitimately wish we had those.
There's
shoes.
a lot of things from Back to the Future, Back to the Future 2015 that I wish we had instead of all the shit that's happened since 2015.
I like the look of Neo Gotham.
Yeah, it's well rendered.
I'm getting Blade Runner vibes, which, I mean, to be fair, that seems like that was kind of sort of a big inspiration for.
Yeah, the cyberpunk aesthetic in general was a big deal for Batman Beyond.
The reason why I refer to it as Neo Gotham is, well, the original Gotham, I believe, really went through a lot of. Well, it's because it's Gotham. Went through a lot of wear and tear and damage, and I believe a lot of conglomerates of like companies and outside, like foreign influence came in and helped rebuild it into Neo Gotham. Hence why, like, you see. Well, yeah, just so.
Yeah, I know that's what they call it in the show, and I know Amanda Waller referenced it in the backstory episode in Epilogue. But Batman Beyond.
Yeah, let me get back to 20 seconds. And also looks like they're giving him the suit as like kind of a Sentai design on, like, he has like a watch or something on his wrist that he'll be wearing so he can just have it on him at all times.
I mean, that's an interesting idea. I don't think that quite works with the Batman Beyond series design, or wouldn't quite.
I mean,
but
to be fair, this specific thing here seems to have a lot of anime influence with it, like, yeah. So
it also seems like, based on the funeral scene and everything, that the people who made this are at least implying that all the events of the Batman Beyond show still like happened, and this is kind of a follow-up to it.
Well, yeah, obviously I don't think they aren't really going with the epilogue. Well, the future scenes of the present time of epilogue, but because they may mention that Bruce is gone. He still looks young here too, so.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what they're doing, but they're at least leaving enough room for the majority of the actual show to have happened.
Yeah. Again, it is doing their own thing like fans often do, but I'm cool with it just because.
Yeah, they're still paying a lot of service to the original show.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I don't know how many people know this, but the voice actor for Terry McGinnis was also the voice actor for Ron Stoppable.
There's also Eric in Boy Meets World. Yeah.
Which I have never seen still.
You fucking heretic.
I remember seeing it advertised, but I never watched it.
I swear to God.
It just never grabbed me.
Honestly, I've stopped counting how many times I'm gonna beat your ass when we meet up, man.
I am aware. I will probably be in an iron lung by the end of it, but that will be okay.
All right, Batman and Beyond.
But Nana Beyond.
He still knows his next step. His next step is you.
Which, I mean, to be fair, is exactly the contingency that Amanda Waller made for him.
Yeah, I really do like the design. Mainly, I'm gonna be honest. I never liked the mouth on the mask for the Batman Beyond suit.
Yeah, I agree. It wasn't the best design element.
No, I think everything else was like pretty sleek, but like the mouth, I don't know. It just never felt. I think the issue is every time I see it like adapted into something else, it just always looked weird and wrong to me.
Mm.
So I'm fine with the visor here and stuff. Granted, I kind of would just like them to do the eyes with like no mouth, you know?
That could have been cool, yeah. Especially if it's doing the future tech thing.
I mean, I've seen a lot of designs where they just cut out the mouth on the mask and just have it kind of be just the pure white eyes with just the black silhouette of the Batman Beyond look. So,
Which, I mean, to be fair, they also did that a lot with the silhouettes of the original Batman as well.
yeah. Um. Anyway,
But Batman and Beyond.
yeah. Okay. Let me get the last video up and running, and okay. Let me screenshot that. So this is the video for the Batman Beyond animated film Kickstarter campaign, or as the title is known as Beyond Broken Will, which I am curious to see how that title works.
Mhm.
Like what that entails, I mean, for the story and stuff.
Mm-hmm. But Batman and Beyond.
Yep. Let me Batman and Beyond.
What's good, y'all? My name is Justin Richburg,
My name is Michael Dowdy.
and we're here to tell y'all about our Kickstarter campaign.
We are doing a film based on Batman Beyond, and we are excited to make this thing happen. We are fans of Batman Beyond, and we know that there are millions of fans out there as well.
Me and Michael debate about
I don't know if it was your internet connection or what, but that was extremely choppy.
It was probably my internet.
Hmm.
I watched this video before I sent it, just to see what
Right.
it was about, and it was fine. So yeah, so if there is any choppiness and stuff about it, I apologize. That's on me. That's not these guys.
Yeah, I don't know even if it was just subject to my phone or what. It might very well be because StreamYard and phones don't get along at the best of times anyway. I'm actually surprised how much I can get away with this, considering that my phone and StreamYard periodically decide they hate each other.
All right.
But Batman and Beyond.
Me and Michael debate about superhero movies all the time. And one of the things that always confused us was why they never made a Batman Beyond movie, especially after Michael Keaton was recast as Batman in the last Flash movie. Man, it can't be no better person to take this into the future with Batman Beyond. And with the announcement of the
To be fair, that was kind of the semi-premise of Batgirl. What we got of Batgirl anyway.
Yeah, that movie. I actually tried to write an idea down on how to do that movie. I did nix Brendan Fraser as Firefly, even though I think that would have been awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I did instead. I had it more personal, focused on Barbara Gordon, revolving around her and her brother James Gordon Jr., who is a fucking psychotic serial killer in the comics.
That I did not know.
Oh, he's fucking just dude. I honestly think he's worse than the fucking Joker.
That is some very big words you are saying there.
Well, for one thing, the terrifying thing is, like, with the Joker, more or less, you know he's evil, but he is done in such a zany, crazy, and flamboyant way that
Because he's still trying to be funny. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But with James Gordon Jr., the dude, it's basically like an actual. He acts like an actual fucking like serial killer, dude. Like legitimately. That's what's more terrifying.
So it's kind of like Lois's brother from Family Guy, the fat guy strangler. Obviously less comedically, but you know what I'm saying.
Think Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs.
Hopefully not with the quasi-gender dysphoria.
No. But you get what I mean. Like, he's terrifying on the fact that he comes off as something that can exist in the real world.
So
he's not
true
fantastical.
crime documentary vibe then.
Yeah. He's not fantastical like any other Batman rogue.
Although now you say all that, I need to know the answer to the question of why is he like that then?
He grew up in Gotham.
Okay.
Well, that and also I think he just he was born that kind of way, like the kind of chemical difference.
Congenital sociopathy.
I believe so, yeah.
But okay, here's my problem with that as the explanation. There are many sociopaths in the world. It's as high as like 1 to 2 out of 100 people that has sociopathic tendencies, and the vast majority of them do not become serial killers.
Well, to be fair, okay, add that to the fact that he also lived in Gotham at the time that all the craziness was starting to really happen. That might have affected him.
Maybe. I just want to know, what was so different about him where, Barb went and, she went the hero route and he went, as you say, potentially darker than the Joker.
To be fair, he wasn't exactly, how to say this, dude wasn't exactly given the true help he needed. Like, because yeah, he probably wasn't given the help that he was actually needed. Like, there's one comic panel I remember seeing where one Halloween he dressed up as the Joker, and James kind of Commissioner Gordon kind of lost it at him with that.
I mean, I can see it both ways because what else would a child growing up in Gotham be for Halloween other than a Batman rogue? Like, Batman rogue is like a default answer to the question for us, and we're not even in universe. How much more explicit would it be if they're, if Batman rogues are on the news every 5 minutes?
I think there's a video I can send you talking about James Gordon Jr. if you want, if you're curious. Like that curious, I mean.
It just now occurred to me. In an elf world, there's probably a world where James Gordon Jr. is a Robin, because I don't see why Bruce wouldn't adopt one of Gordon, or like assuming anything ever happened to Gordon, or even if not, he doesn't just quasi adopt orphans, because I mean, I think it's Duke. Spoiler has a family, and yeah, he still got adopted and so on.
You got that so wrong, dude.
Do I?
Yeah, Duke.
To be fair, I don't know much. I don't know much about Duke. I learned that he existed mostly from the aforementioned Tumblr posts where he's.
Can I explain?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't remember his last name, but Duke is known as the Signal. He operates in the daytime of Gotham. Metahuman. His parents were permanently Jokerized and were mentally broken by the Joker and tried to kill them. All that was in an attempt to mentally break Batman, because Duke's family during what was it, 0 year or no? Yeah, 0 year. It was a whole event with Batman. Helped him out. And this was when Duke was a kid. Hold on. And Batman did kind of take him in, helped him out, trained him, and while Batman's supposed to be kind of like the agent of fear for Gotham at night, the Signal is supposed to be like the beacon of hope during the daytime.
Okay. Question: what is Duke's metahuman ability then?
It's somewhat. It's sort of photokinesis.
Okay, that does make the name Signal make sense then.
Yeah. He also has a connection to the monitors. I believe it's supposed to... No, okay, wasn't it both his parents? I believe it was either his stepfather or might have just been his mother that he was with. Either way, he has... I believe his father was a monitor. And
okay, that's interesting.
Again,
that would kind of make him like part cosmic entity then.
Yeah, he actually has kind of a sort of a destiny or future as a monitor or alternate. I don't know. Like, he's not a character I've looked into most. He's a relatively new one.
So he's kind of the Bat family's answer to Franklin Richards. That's interesting.
Either that, or all I know is in the Dark Multiverse, there is a version of him that became a monitor, saw the end of the universe, but transcended to become a higher being called the Final Knight that protects the finality, that protects the Dark Multiverse.
I hate the existence of the Dark Multiverse so much. It needs to be destroyed.
Well, to be fair, he's actively searching to destroy cosmic entities that are seeking to destroy all life.
Right, and that's fair, but the Dark Knight's Metal was a bad storyline in general, and the Dark Multiverse is...
So, and I'll look up an image after we're done. You know what? Hold on. Let me look up an image just to show you how badass this motherfucker is. He has a Batman Knight armor forged from the forged from the skinned body of a Batman dragon that he did himself,
Okay.
while also wielding a battle axe rock guitar.
So he's been raiding Valhalla's closet. That might not be a reference you'd get. That was he's a member of the Justice
Dexter's
Friends.
Laboratory.
Yeah.
Dexter's Laboratory. I remember.
Okay.
The fuck?
Your threshold for whether you know shit or not is completely random because some
Motherfucker.
shit
No,
shit that I would consider like default knowledge is before your time, and some shit that I would think I'd have to explain to you I don't. It's weird sometimes.
Yeah. I grew up when like the golden age of like Cartoon Network fucking happened. Okay, it's just
Well, you're 4 years after me. That's I didn't think you would know about the Justice Friends because about halfway through Dexter's Laboratory's run, it seasonal rotted basically entirely off the vine. So that's why I wondered if I would have to explain to you the Justice Friends in Valhalla, because one, when Dexter's Laboratory got bad, they stopped having Justice Friends segments. And two, pretty much after the art style changed, it just the latter seasons of Dexter's Laboratory are not worthwhile. Only the first 2 seasons are. Anywho, Batman Beyond. We really have to wrap this up relatively soon. It's after midnight. Which means Brainstormer has to go to bed.
actually I'm feeling a lot more energetic for some reason. So
Well, good. I'm glad I helped instead of just being a thing to drain your energy like I usually am.
you beat me to the punch on that actually. So yep. All right.
Batman Beyond.
Batman Beyond movie made it like even sweeter. We would think that would really become a reality, but you know, it got canceled by WB, and it's like they just keep on not wanting to do nothing with this character and just keep shelving them. And that's the main reason why we wanted to make it ourselves.
All right, so this is a fan-made animated short film inspired by the world of Batman Beyond. It's about Terry McGinnis.
I've been saying this basically since Damian got introduced. Terry is the superior Bat son.
Terry.
Yes. Terry is the
You said
superior
Barry.
Bat son. Oh, I didn't.
I heard that. Like I heard you say Barry.
No, I didn't. I said Terry. But in any case, he is the superior.
Oh.
He is the superior Bat son.
Okay, I think I figured out what. Okay, no, you glitched out on my end for me, so I might have. Okay, man, my bad.
Okay, but point being, Terry has always been the superior Bat son. It also probably helps that he didn't need to be raped into existence, looking at you, Talia. But
Okay, to be fair, that was a retcon by Grant Morrison for whatever fucking reason.
But point being, Terry is the superior Bat son, and he always has been. And I always like the fact that it was Amanda Waller who made it, because that kind of makes him, or that kind of makes her his mother in a roundabout way. And of course, there's fucked up mad scientist bullshit involved because it's Batman and Amanda Waller. They're not going to have a normal relationship. They're both far too addicted to their jobs and their position as like a emblem of justice to have a normal functional relationship. That's one of the reasons I think the relationship works by proxy, because they have a fucked up mad scientist type relationship. But of course, what other kind of relationship could Batman and Amanda Waller have?
But also, I do respect these guys for making their own thing instead of being all crappy about how there's not a Batman Beyond movie.
I mean, in a sane world, they would be hired by Warner Brothers after seeing this Kickstarter, and we'd have a better DC universe. Granted, if Warner Brothers was capable of making good decisions with the DC universe, a lot of the mistakes made with the Snyderverse would not have been made in the first place.
Okay.
Batman
Alright.
Beyond.
Okay, so, well, actually, before we do, I do want to. I found an image of the final night.
Mm.
Yeah. Just to show how cool he is. And then we'll get back to the trailer. There we go.
Yep, fair point. Anyway,
All right.
back to the Batman of
They have not done anything with him lately. That specific version of Duke.
In
Granted,
fairness, the Dark Knight's Metal storyline didn't really have many good consequences, but I guess that is kind of one.
okay, what about the Upside Down Man?
Upside Down Man existed long before the Dark Knight's Metal storyline.
I thought he was.
They
least-
retconned aspects of him into that, but no, he existed before Dark Knight's Metal. Anyway, Batman Beyond.
Okay.
The volume's kind of low. I don't know what happened.
Hold on. Okay, let me turn it up a bit then. That's oh, whatever. Okay, hold on. Okay.
It's about Terry McGinnis, the new Batman of Neo Gotham. He's drawn into a chilling investigation following the death of a legendary Justice League member. All the signs point toward evil terrorists within his past. But as the case deepens, Terry's will is pushed to its absolute limits. So that's pretty much the premise of the entire.
So Poison Ivy, or someone related to Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
I actually would like to see. Well, okay, Batman Beyond made a express point to introduce new villains, which I was cool with, like Beyond or like people that were coming about.
Yeah, there were still nods to the classics. Like there's an entire Joker gang in Batman Beyond, for example.
Yeah, but like repeat, like people said that the New 52 Batman Beyond, or yeah, New 52 didn't do great because they constantly did like Beyond versions of the original Batman characters. So,
I did like that Terry has his own rogues.
Yeah.
It's good. Granted, it's still nice when they make references to the classic, like when the speaking of the Joker gang, when the twins get when the twins get picked up from jail by Harley in her old age.
Yeah. Is it? Yeah. It's Dee Dee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dee Dee, and I forget her sister's name.
Ghoul was actually really interesting because he has more of the hollow, like Scarecrow kind of aesthetic, but he's with the Jokers. So remember Ghoul?
Yeah, the one who looks like the Scarecrow, the one that old Bruce did unspeakable things to with a cane, apparently in the crowd.
Threatened to.
No. If you remember, Batman was doing the threatening thing, and then old Bruce looks over, says, "I can't believe I was ever that green." Grabs the cane and goes, "This is how you interrogate someone." And it cuts away to everyone just looking horrified while he does the whole thing. And then it cuts back to Ghoul, like, spilling his guts. Oh god,
I could have sworn Batman. I could have sworn Batman plays good cop in that scenario and like stops.
No, that's what John Stewart says after old Bruce gets done scarring Ghoul for life. He says, I never thought I would see the day where Batman played good cop, and somebody responded to him with, "Everything's relative." It wasn't that Batman was actually playing good cop. It's that Batman's usual bad cop persona is apparently as nothing when compared to old Bruce and what the fuck ever he did to Ghoul with a cane.
All right.
Batman and Beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Our film is going to be around 30 minutes long, close to 30 minutes long. The main selling point to our movie is action scenes. Most of the animation is already done, and that's what the budget is going to, like getting animators that specialize in doing action and that will reimagine.
I respect that. Like they are relatively done. They're just that's actually cool because usually with these kind of projects they don't start production
until the
money's out. So yeah,
which I mean, to be fair, in a lot of cases they can't.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
I know when we do Lionhearted, we're probably going to have to do the crowdfunding before the actual work is done because you got to pay an artist somewhere.
Yeah, but no, I respect that they're just asking to help finish this project more so than actually have it start.
It is nice of them, but to be fair, I think in most cases people haven't started because they can't without the money necessary.
No, I know. I'm not saying. I'm just saying that it's cool and nice that they basically have it done. They just want to make sure it's polished and perfect, and just they're asking people for an amount of money so they can finish it rather than start it all. You know, because sometimes there is that kind of. I'm not saying it in the best way. It's just different and it's respectable, you know. Anyway, Batman and Beyond.
Batman and Beyond. I hope they're successful. I assume because we've already gotten the trailers that they probably were successful.
Well, the thing hasn't come out yet. This was released only. This video itself that we're watching right now was only released 8 days ago on YouTube. So,
okay, so they definitely are not. They definitely are not done, man. Okay, yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
It flummoxes me that two randoms on the internet can do better than the entirety of Warner Brothers creative apparatus. Well, yeah, that's a reoccurring theme whenever we talk about talk about Kickstarters, but
Yeah.
it annoys me. It annoys me that we live in a world where randoms on the internet, in which category I very much include myself, have to do all the work that Hollywood in general is not doing. Because in a sane world, even if they somehow missed guys like this, in a sane world where Hollywood actually functioned for 5 minutes, you would see a scenario where studios would be raiding fan films and raiding Kickstarters to get new talent in the door.
Okay.
Because we've seen what people can do with the budget of fan films, and they're always better than what Hollywood is doing, no matter how many millions of dollars they have. So
Usually.
imagine what fan filmmakers and stuff could do if they had a Hollywood budget behind their shit. But Batman and Beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So consider us fans first, and this is the mindset that we have.
Good, obviously, good luck, guys. What you have so far looks amazing. So good luck, and hopefully Warner Brothers doesn't copyright strike
what-
you to death.
Usually for DC stuff, they don't really do that. Marvel.
Which, I mean, yeah, it does put you in a class above, Disney and Marvel, because this story always makes me upset. There was a kid who died of cancer, and this kid was like 4 or 5 years old, and he loved Spider-Man. So his dad, when he died, wanted to put an emblem of Spider-Man on his grave, and Marvel, by way of Disney, essentially sued him because you're not allowed to put our characters' likenesses on graves because that associates our brand with morbidity and stuff.
Alright.
Of course,
Okay, so
by doing something that's soulless and and inconceivable, they just proved that their brand are a bunch of dicks. Because honestly, as far as deaths go, having your character be on someone's gravestone because they love the character so much is actually quite a wholesome thing, all things considered. At least from my occasionally warped perspective, mind you.
Alright, so I just looked at the Kickstarter. Got 1,400 already.
Good for them.
Although their goal is 15,000.
Which fair, because animation costs a lot of fucking
Oh,
money.
yeah, that's fair. They got 51 days to go. So, like I said, they only started 8 days ago.
So they've already got more than 1,000 in there. That's good.
Yeah, they get 23 backers right now. So,
and presumably we will be returning to review a final trailer or whatever the hell, as and when they do get enough money to finish.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Don, this might give you some pride of your state. They're based in Philadelphia.
Philly and Pittsburgh aren't really, people who live in Pennsylvania don't really consider them part of the state in the same way a lot of people from the state of New York are trying to distinguish themselves from the people of the city of New York, just because urban cities suck and don't really reflect the culture of the states they're in is the problem.
Okay, yeah, so I was right. Poison Ivy is part of this project, and I'm seeing the design they have for it, and it's actually pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no fucking way.
What now?
Well, okay, so for a list of casting, One of them is Ace Vane, who is a YouTuber. Well, he's a rapper who has a YouTube channel as well, who does like voiceovers of like animated stuff, like specifically DC and Marvel and stuff, and just it's hilarious parody stuff.
Who's he playing in
It doesn't say. It's just. Oh no! Yeah, no. There. Yeah, it doesn't say. He's like so he. But yeah, he does like parodies of and like abridgment, like abridged stuff, kind of.
Right. But
I've actually told you
as the latter parts of DBZ Abridged definitely showed, people who are normally responsible for parody can give some serious, legitimate performances in said comedies when they want to. Although, in fairness, Teen 4-Star are actually like voice actors in the industry, so they were able to get some, admittedly at the time, lesser known talent involved. They became more well known later, actually. Like, for example, the guy who voiced Cooler and Dr. Gero in DBZ Abridged is the voice of Ainzul Gon in the Overlord dub.
All right. Anyway, guys. With that, I want to say adios, aloha, avideze, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
shalom, and fuck off.